When people get too much of what they want, they often lose their drive to achieve more. This happens because their desire to improve or succeed fades when satisfaction comes too easily or too often. Imagine a person who wins small prizes every day just by showing up. At first, they might feel happy and motivated, but after a while, the excitement wears off and they stop trying hard. This is what we call desire saturation. Desire is the force that pushes people to set goals, work hard, and improve themselves. When desire is strong, people take risks, learn new skills, and solve problems. But if desire weakens, they become lazy or bored. This can happen when rewards are easy to get, or when people feel too comfortable with what they have. For example, a student who always gets good grades without much effort might stop studying seriously. The easy success makes the student lose interest in learning more. In some cases, the environment itself encourages desire saturation. Think about a video game that gives players frequent rewards like coins, power-ups, or new levels. At first, players feel excited and keep playing. But if the rewards come too quickly and without challenge, the game stops being fun. Players don't feel the need to improve their skills or plan strategies. They might even quit playing because the game no longer feels rewarding. This idea applies to work and life too. When people receive praise or bonuses without much effort, they might stop trying to do their best. In a company, employees who get the same rewards, regardless of their performance, might lose motivation. They may stop seeking ways to solve problems or improve efficiency. The company's overall success can suffer because the workers no longer feel challenged or valued for hard work. On the other hand, some amount of satisfaction is necessary. Without any reward or positive feedback, people can become discouraged. Desire needs to be balanced with rewards that feel earned. If rewards are rare and meaningful, people tend to stay motivated longer. For example, an artist who sells a few paintings after many months of hard work will likely feel proud and want to create more. The difficulty of earning success makes the reward feel special and drives the artist to keep improving. Desire saturation also affects habits and addictions. Consider someone who eats sweets every day just for pleasure. At first, the sugar rush feels great, but after eating sweets all the time, the person might need more sugar to feel the same happiness. Eventually, the joy of eating sweets fades, and the person loses interest or even feels sick of it. This shows how overexposure to something satisfying can reduce desire. Another example comes from social media use. People get likes, comments, and shares as rewards for their posts. When these come frequently and easily, users might check their phones less often or feel less excited about posting. The constant flood of approval can dull the pleasure of each new like, making the motivation to engage weaker over time. Desire saturation happens because our brains adjust to repeated rewards. When something good happens again and again, the brain starts to expect it. The surprise and excitement go away, and the reward feels normal or even boring. This is known as habituation. It explains why a bonus that once felt amazing can start to feel like a usual event if it happens too often. One way to avoid desire saturation is to make rewards more meaningful or challenging to achieve. If goals require effort, learning, or skill, the reward feels more valuable. For instance, a worker who solves a difficult problem and gets recognition for it will likely feel motivated to tackle the next challenge. The difficulty keeps desire alive. In daily life, people can protect their motivation by varying what they do and how they reward themselves. Trying new activities, setting different goals, or delaying rewards can keep desire fresh. For example, saving money to buy a special item after months of careful spending feels more rewarding than spending small amounts frequently without much thought. Desire saturation is a natural result of constant satisfaction. It shows how important it is to balance rewards with effort and challenge. When satisfaction comes too easily, desire fades and motivation drops. When people face obstacles and earn their rewards, their desire stays strong and drives them forward. This balance helps individuals and organizations grow and succeed over time. When people repeat the same phrases to themselves over and over, those words start to lose their meaning and emotional impact. This happens because the brain becomes used to the repeated message, a process called semantic habituation. As a result, the words no longer stir strong feelings or motivation inside. This can weaken a person's drive to act or change. Self-talk is the way people talk to themselves in their minds. It shapes their thoughts, feelings, and behavior. Positive self-talk can encourage someone to keep going when things get tough. For example, a runner might tell themselves, "I can finish this race," to push through pain and tiredness. But if the runner repeats this phrase too many times, it might stop feeling helpful. The words turn into noise, and the runner might lose motivation. Semantic habituation happens because the brain filters out repeated information to focus on new or important things. When a message repeats without change, the brain treats it as less urgent or relevant. This makes the emotional response weaker. It's like hearing the same alarm sound over and over. At first, it grabs attention, but later, the sound becomes background noise. This effect can make self-talk less effective over time. People who use the same motivational phrases every day might find that these phrases don't inspire them anymore. For example, someone who always says, "I'm strong and capable," might stop feeling that confidence after weeks or months. The phrase becomes automatic and stops triggering the emotional boost it once gave. The loss of emotional power in repeated self-talk can reduce internal motivation. Internal motivation comes from within. It's the personal drive to reach a goal or overcome challenges. When words lose their power, the motivation tied to those words fades. People might feel stuck or lose the energy to keep working toward what they want. This is why variety and meaning matter in self-talk. Changing the words or the way you say them can keep the message fresh and emotionally strong. Instead of repeating the exact phrase, try adjusting it to reflect current feelings or goals. For instance, if "I can do this" feels empty, switching to "I have faced hard things before and I will again" can bring new meaning and feeling. Another way to avoid semantic habituation is to connect self-talk with real experiences or actions. When words link to specific moments or efforts, they carry more weight. For example, after finishing a tough task, telling yourself, "I earned this success," feels more powerful than a general phrase repeated without connection. The emotional impact grows because the words reflect reality. People can also use self-talk that focuses on emotions or senses rather than just ideas. Instead of saying, "I am confident," they might say, "I feel calm and steady." This shift can create stronger feelings because it taps into physical sensations and emotions, not just concepts. Changing the language like this can help keep motivation alive. In some situations, people rely too much on self-talk as a way to push themselves. When the words lose power, they might struggle to find other sources of motivation. This is common when people face long-term challenges, like recovering from an illness or learning a difficult skill. If self-talk stops working, they may feel stuck or discouraged. To break free from this, people can try new methods to boost motivation. These include setting small goals, celebrating real progress, or talking with others for support. These actions provide fresh feedback and emotion, which can recharge the meaning behind self-talk. When motivation comes from multiple sources, it becomes stronger and more lasting. Understanding semantic habituation helps explain why self-talk doesn't always work as expected. It shows that words need to stay meaningful and connected to feelings to keep their power. Repeating the same phrase without change is unlikely to maintain strong motivation over time. Instead, people should pay attention to how their self-talk feels and adjust it to keep it alive. In daily life, this means being mindful about the messages we tell ourselves. If a phrase no longer inspires, it's time to change it or add new ones. Using varied and meaningful self-talk helps maintain emotional strength. This keeps internal motivation active and helps people move forward, even when challenges last for a long time. Sometimes, people keep doing something even after the reward they were chasing is gone. This happens because new rewards, often internal, take the place of the original one. This process is called reward substitution drift. The behavior continues not because of the old reward, but because a different kind of satisfaction has replaced it. Think about a child who receives candy for cleaning their room. At first, the candy is the clear reward, and the child cleans the room just to get it. But after a while, the candy stops coming. Instead of stopping, the child keeps cleaning the room because they start to enjoy the feeling of order or the praise from parents. These new rewards take the place of the candy and keep the behavior going. Reward substitution drift works because people don't just act for external rewards like money, prizes, or treats. They also seek internal rewards. Internal rewards come from feelings like pride, satisfaction, or a sense of accomplishment. When external rewards disappear, internal rewards can take over to keep the behavior alive. An example comes from exercise routines. Many people start working out because they want to lose weight or get a prize like a medal. Once they reach their goal or stop receiving praise, they may expect to quit, but often they keep exercising because they feel stronger, healthier, or simply enjoy the routine. The initial reward shifts to new internal rewards, and the behavior continues without the old motivation. This shift is common in learning too. A student might begin studying hard to get good grades or praise from teachers. If those external rewards stop, the student might lose motivation at first. But if the student finds satisfaction in understanding a subject or solving problems, they continue to study. The internal reward replaces the external one and supports the habit. Reward substitution drift also shows up in work habits. Someone might take a job for the paycheck, but later find meaning in the work itself. When the paycheck stays the same or stops increasing, the person might continue working because they enjoy the tasks or the feeling of helping others. The job becomes rewarding in a new way, keeping the person engaged. This idea explains why habits often last longer than their original reasons. When people start something for a clear reward, the behavior can grow beyond that. It changes from being driven by outside factors to being driven by internal feelings. This internal motivation is often stronger and more stable over time. Reward substitution drift also involves changes in the brain. When people experience a reward, their brain releases chemicals like dopamine, which creates feelings of pleasure. Over time, the brain learns to associate the behavior itself with these good feelings, not just the original reward. This shift helps explain why behavior can persist even when the reward is gone. The process is not automatic for everyone. Some people may stop when the external reward disappears because they don't find or recognize internal rewards. Others may discover internal satisfaction naturally. This depends on personality, the type of behavior, and the environment. For example, people who enjoy challenges may find internal rewards more easily than those who rely on external feedback. Understanding reward substitution drift can help in building habits or changing behavior. When creating a new habit, it's useful to link it to internal rewards from the start. For example, a person trying to eat healthier might focus not just on losing weight, but on how food makes them feel. More energy or better mood. These internal rewards can keep the habit going, even when external rewards fade. On the other hand, if a habit depends only on external rewards, It might stop as soon as the reward ends. For instance, someone who only goes to the gym because of a discount might quit when the deal finishes. Without internal motivation, the behavior often disappears. This concept also applies to breaking bad habits. If someone stops getting an external reward, like social approval for smoking, the habit might fade unless internal rewards or other motivators keep it alive. Changing behavior often means finding new rewards to replace the old ones. Reward substitution drift helps explain why behavior changes over time. It shows how people move from acting for outside rewards to acting because of what they feel inside. This shift can make habits last longer and become part of who people are. Understanding this process offers a clearer view of motivation and habit formation. Sometimes your brain works against itself by chasing two goals that don't fit well together. This happens without you even realizing it. Your mind pulls you in different directions, and these hidden conflicts can slow you down or cause frustration. This is what we call autonomic goal conflict. Your brain runs many tasks at once. Some goals are clear and conscious, like deciding to eat healthy or save money. But others happen deep inside your mind, outside of your awareness. These hidden goals might contradict what you want on the surface. When this happens, your brain struggles to balance them, creating a tug-of-war. For example, imagine you want to quit smoking. On one side, your conscious goal is to stop for better health. But somewhere inside, your brain also holds a goal connected to comfort or stress relief from smoking. The desire for relief pulls you back towards cigarettes, even when you consciously want to quit. This clash between wanting health and wanting comfort creates a conflict that can make quitting very hard. Another example is someone who wants to work hard but also avoid stress. On one hand, they want to succeed at their job and reach their goals. On the other, they want peace and relaxation. These goals pull against each other. The need to push forward may cause stress, which makes the brain pull back toward rest. This conflict can cause hesitation or feeling stuck. This conflict often happens because the brain prioritizes different needs at the same time. Survival, comfort, social acceptance, and achievement all matter to us. Sometimes these needs don't fit neatly together. For instance, seeking social approval might clash with being honest if telling the truth risks rejection. Your brain works to balance these competing needs, sometimes causing confusion or mixed feelings. You don't always notice this happening. The conflict works in the background, affecting your decisions and behavior without clear signs. You might feel restless, unsure, or frustrated without knowing why. These feelings can arise because your brain can't settle on one clear goal. Sometimes, the conflict causes what feels like self-sabotage. For instance, a person who wants to finish a project might keep getting distracted or procrastinating. Deep down, their brain may be avoiding failure or criticism. This hidden fear conflicts with the conscious goal to complete the work. The result is behavior that seems to work against their wishes. Autonomic goal conflict can also affect relationships. You might want to be close to someone, but also keep your distance to protect yourself. These opposing desires cause mixed signals and tension. Your brain tries to meet both needs, leading to unpredictable or confusing actions. This conflict doesn't mean you are weak or failing. It shows how complex the brain's whole system is. Your mind tries to keep you safe and happy in many ways at once. Understanding this can help you be more patient with yourself. One way to handle this conflict is to become more aware of your hidden goals. Reflect on your feelings and actions to find what might be pulling you in different directions. For example, if you find yourself procrastinating, ask what fear or need might be behind it. Recognizing these hidden goals can help you address them directly. You can also try to align your goals so they don't conflict. Instead of pushing one goal while ignoring another, find ways to meet both. For example, if you want to work hard but avoid stress, build breaks into your schedule. This way, you honor both goals and reduce conflict. Sometimes, it helps to accept that conflicting goals exist and manage them rather than trying to eliminate one. Your brain may never fully stop holding opposing desires. Learning to live with and balance them can reduce frustration. Another method is setting small steps toward your goals. This can reduce the tension between conflicting needs. For example, if quitting smoking feels too hard because of the comfort it gives, you might cut down slowly rather than stopping all at once. This gradual approach respects both goals and makes progress easier. Your brain's unconscious goal system works to protect and satisfy you. When goals conflict, it creates tension that affects your choices and feelings. By noticing these conflicts and working with them, you can improve your focus and reduce inner struggle. This understanding helps explain why sometimes your mind pulls you in different directions, even when you want to move forward clearly. Sometimes people do something good and then feel it's okay to act in ways they usually wouldn't allow. This happens without them realizing it. Their mind gives them permission to indulge or slip up because they earned it by doing something positive first. This idea is called unconscious moral licensing. Imagine a person who donates money to charity. After giving, they might feel they deserve a treat, like eating a large dessert or buying something expensive. They don't plan this. It happens automatically. Their brain tells them, I did something good, so I can relax my rules a bit. This internal permission often leads to behavior that contradicts their usual values or goals. Unconscious moral licensing works because people want to see themselves as good and moral. When they act kindly or ethically, they feel they have built up some moral credit. This credit balances out future actions that might not be as good. The mind uses this balance to keep a positive self-image. It's like having an invisible scale where good deeds tip it toward feeling virtuous, giving room to lean toward indulgence. For example, a person who chooses to recycle carefully might feel justified in wasting food later that day. The recycling feels like a moral win, which allows the mind to overlook the waste. The two actions don't seem linked on the surface, but inside, the brain connects them. Doing good in one area gives a pass in another. This effect shows up in dieting too. Someone who eats a healthy meal might feel allowed to skip exercise or eat unhealthy snacks afterward. They think, I made a good choice, so I can relax now. The initial good act becomes a reason to lower self-control. This cycle can make it harder to stick to long-term goals. Moral licensing can also affect how people treat others. After helping a friend, someone might feel less obligated to assist others later. The first good deed creates a sense of having done enough. The brain uses this feeling to reduce guilt or pressure. This means people might not always act as consistently as they intend. The process happens unconsciously, which means people are usually unaware of the reasoning behind their actions. They don't realize that one good act leads to a justification for a less good one. This lack of awareness makes it harder to catch and control moral licensing. Research shows that when people reflect on their values or goals before making choices, moral licensing happens less. For example, if a person reminds themselves why they want to eat healthy before a meal, they are less likely to use a healthy choice as a reason to overindulge later. This suggests that staying aware helps prevent the effect. Moral licensing also varies depending on the type of good deed and indulgence. The brain tends to link similar areas. If a person acts generously with money, they might feel licensed to be less generous with time. Or if they act kindly toward the environment, they might feel free to be careless in other areas of life. The mind keeps track of moral spending in different categories. People sometimes use moral licensing to deal with feelings of guilt or failure. If they feel bad about a past mistake, doing something good can ease that feeling. This relief can then lead to indulgent behavior because the mind feels it has balanced the scales. It's a way to cope with internal tension. understanding unconscious moral licensing helps explain why people struggle to maintain consistent behavior. It shows that being good once does not guarantee staying good afterward. People need to stay aware of how their mind balances good and bad actions. To reduce moral licensing, focus on long-term goals and avoid treating good acts as excuses. Instead of seeing good behavior as a credit to spend, view it as part of a continuous effort. This mindset helps keep actions aligned with values over time. The mind wants to protect its positive self-image. Moral licensing is a natural way it does this, but it can lead to slipping from desired behavior. Recognizing this pattern helps people make choices that fit their true goals rather than just feeling allowed to indulge. This understanding supports better control over behavior and clearer self-awareness. People often start with habits that make them stand out. They might follow unique routines or hold unusual beliefs. Over time, though, these habits tend to move closer to what most people around them do. This change happens without much thought. It's called behavioral drift toward the normative average. The normative average means the usual way people behave in a culture or group. It sets an unspoken standard for how to act, what to like, or what to believe. When someone drifts toward this average, they slowly lose some of their uniqueness and fit in better with others. This process happens because people naturally want to belong and avoid conflict. Imagine a person who prefers a rare music style, like jazz or classical, in a group where most people listen to pop music. At first, they might proudly share their taste and stand apart, but over months or years, they might start listening more to pop, just to connect better with friends or avoid feeling different. The unique habit of listening to jazz drifts toward the group's common choice. This drift occurs because social pressure influences behavior even when it is subtle. People want to feel accepted and avoid standing out in ways that might cause rejection. When unique habits clash with group norms, the brain senses discomfort. Slowly, people change their habits to reduce this discomfort and fit in better. The effect also shows up in daily routines. Someone might start with unusual habits around diet, exercise, or work style. If these habits are very different from those around them, the person may shift to more common patterns. For example, someone who works late into the night alone might start joining coworkers in the regular office hours, adapting to the group schedule. Behavioral drift toward the normative average can be helpful. It makes social life smoother. When people share common habits, it's easier to communicate and cooperate. Groups function better when their members act in similar ways. The drift helps individuals connect and reduce conflicts. However, this drift can also limit individuality and creativity. Unique ideas or habits can fade as people adjust to the group. This means some original ways of thinking or acting might disappear over time. For instance, an artist with a very personal style might slowly adopt more popular trends to sell more work or appeal to a larger audience. Their creative uniqueness drifts toward the norm. The drift often happens unconsciously. People do not usually plan to change their habits to fit in. Instead, small adjustments add up over time. This gradual shift can be hard to notice until the person realizes they no longer do things the way they once did. This process also works through observation. People learn what is normal by watching others. If everyone around you acts a certain way, your brain marks that as the standard. You start to copy behaviors and attitudes, even if you didn't decide to. For example, a newcomer in a workplace might notice how coworkers handle stress or communicate and begin to adopt those methods, moving closer to the group's average behavior. Family and culture play a big role in setting these norms. From childhood, people absorb what is usual in their environment. Even as adults, the need to belong often pulls people back to those familiar ways. Changing habits to fit the norm feels safer and more comfortable. Behavioral drift can affect values and opinions too. Someone with strong views might soften them over time if their social circle disagrees. For instance, a person with strict views on diet or politics might adjust to avoid arguments or feel more included. The drift toward the average opinion helps maintain harmony in relationships. This tendency doesn't mean people lose all independence. Some hold tightly to their unique habits or values despite social pressure, but many find balance by blending their individuality with accepted norms. They keep parts of what makes them different while adapting enough to fit in. Knowing about behavioral drift helps explain why people change without obvious reasons. It also shows how powerful social influence can be. The brain naturally moves toward the safe middle ground to avoid conflict and build connection. If someone wants to keep a unique habit or belief, they need to be aware of this drift. They must actively choose to stay true to themselves. This can mean finding others who share their habits or creating spaces where they feel safe to be different. Otherwise, the natural pull toward the normative average will shape their behavior over time. Behavioral drift toward the normative average is a quiet, ongoing process. It shapes how people act in groups and cultures. It supports belonging and cooperation, but also challenges uniqueness and change. Understanding this helps explain how habits and attitudes evolve in social settings. Your brain has a baseline level of attention that keeps you alert and able to focus. This baseline is called tonic alertness. Sometimes this natural alertness drops and you feel less awake or less able to concentrate. When that happens, you start looking for things to grab your attention and wake you up. This drive to find stimulation can feel almost uncontrollable. This is what we call tonic alertness collapse. Imagine sitting at your desk after a long day. Your energy feels low and your mind drifts. The usual focus you have isn't there anymore. You might find yourself checking your phone, scrolling through social media, or watching videos just to feel awake again. These actions provide quick bursts of stimulation, but they don't fix the underlying drop in alertness. Instead, they satisfy the brain's craving for something engaging. Tonic alertness collapse happens because the brain's natural ability to stay alert weakens. This can result from tiredness, boredom, or mental overload. When the baseline attention dips, the brain signals that it needs more input. The mind seeks out new or intense experiences to restore focus and energy. For example, a student studying late at night might suddenly lose concentration. Instead of continuing to read, they might switch to a fast-paced video game or chat with friends online. The game or chat offers quick, strong stimulation that feels easier to focus on than the textbook. This shift happens because the brain tries to raise alertness by finding more exciting tasks. The problem with this pattern is that seeking stimulation often leads to distraction. Instead of fixing the low alertness, it keeps pulling attention away from important work or goals. People might spend hours jumping from one source of stimulation to another without completing what they planned. This behavior feels compulsive because the brain craves constant input to stay awake. This collapse affects more than just work or study. It shows up in daily life when people feel restless or unable to sit still. Someone waiting in a long line or stuck in traffic might pull out their phone to browse news or play games. They do this to fight the drop in tonic alertness, which makes waiting feel harder and dull. The collapse can worsen if people rely too much on artificial stimulation. Caffeine, loud music, or fast media can temporarily raise alertness, but they don't address the underlying drop. Over time, the brain might depend more on these quick fixes, making natural alertness weaker. This cycle can create a habit of constant stimulation seeking. Tonic alertness collapse also connects to mental fatigue. When your brain works hard for a long time, it needs rest to recover alertness. If rest doesn't come, attention weakens and stimulation seeking increases. This is why people feel wired but tired after long hours of screen time or intense focus. The collapse happens automatically. You don't decide to lose alertness or become distracted. It's a natural response of the brain, trying to protect itself from boredom or exhaustion. Understanding this helps explain why staying focused can be so difficult, especially during repetitive or dull tasks. To manage tonic alertness collapse, it helps to plan breaks and vary activities. Short rests or changing tasks can restore baseline alertness and reduce the urge for constant stimulation. For instance, taking a 5-minute walk or doing simple stretches can reset the brain better than scrolling on a phone. Creating an environment that supports steady attention also matters. Good lighting, fresh air, and comfortable seating can help maintain alertness. Avoiding too much noise or interruptions reduces the chance of the brain collapsing into stimulation seeking. Sometimes, people try to fight the collapse by pushing harder or forcing focus. This usually backfires, increasing fatigue and distraction. Instead, recognizing when alertness is low and responding with rest or gentle activity works better. Tonic alertness collapse shows how attention is not just about willpower. It depends on the brain's natural rhythms and needs. When baseline attention dips, the brain acts to restore itself by seeking stimulation. This can lead to distraction and compulsive behavior if not managed well. By understanding this process, people can develop habits that respect their brain's limits. This helps maintain focus without falling into the trap of constant stimulation seeking. It also supports better energy and mental clarity throughout the day. People make sense of their lives by telling themselves stories about who they are and where they're going. These stories connect past experiences, present actions, and future goals. When this story stays clear and steady, it helps people build habits that last. But when the story falls apart or becomes confusing, it can weaken long-term habits. This is called temporal narrative collapse. Imagine someone who used to exercise regularly and believed they were a healthy person. Their story included being active, eating well, and feeling strong. Over time, life changes. Work gets busy, family demands increase, or health problems arise. If the person loses the connection between their past active self and their current busy life, the story becomes unclear. They might stop exercising because it no longer fits their story. Without a clear narrative, their long-term habits start to fade. Temporal narrative collapse happens when people lose a sense of continuity. Their past, present, and future don't line up well anymore. This can occur after big life events like moving to a new city, losing a job, or going through a relationship change. These events disrupt the story they tell themselves about who they are. When the story breaks down, it's hard to keep habits that depend on seeing oneself in a certain way. For example, someone who has always seen themselves as a good student might struggle to maintain study habits after failing a test. The failure shakes the story they told themselves. I am a capable learner. If they can't rewrite the story to include this setback as part of growth, their habits can collapse. They stop studying regularly because the old story no longer feels true. The story about one's life guides choices and actions. It gives meaning to daily habits by connecting them to bigger goals. Without a clear narrative, habits feel random or pointless. It's like trying to follow a map that is torn or missing pieces. Without a map, it's easy to lose direction. Temporal narrative collapse also explains why people sometimes feel stuck or lost. When the story breaks, motivation drops. People lose interest in habits that once mattered. For example, someone who wants to save money but faces unexpected bills might lose sight of their financial goals. Their story about future security becomes unclear, and saving habits weaken. Rebuilding the narrative helps restore habits. This means creating a new story that connects past, present, and future. For instance, after a setback, the person can tell themselves, I faced a challenge, but I'm learning and moving forward. This updated story includes the difficulty, but keeps the identity and goals alive. It supports habits by giving them meaning again. Sometimes, people resist changing their story, even when life shifts. They hold on to old narratives that no longer fit. This resistance can cause frustration or confusion. It also makes it harder to keep habits because the story and reality don't match. For example, someone who believes they are always productive might ignore signs of burnout. Their habits suffer because the story denies current struggles. Temporal narrative collapse often happens without awareness. People don't always notice when their life story becomes unclear. They might only feel the effects as a loss of motivation or growing confusion about their goals. Paying attention to these feelings can help identify when the narrative needs rebuilding. Writing or talking about life experiences can help repair the story. Reflecting on past events and how they shape the present can create a clearer narrative. This process helps link habits to identity and purpose. For example, journaling about challenges and progress can connect small daily actions to a larger story of growth. Social connections also play a role. Sharing your story with others can strengthen it. Friends, family, or mentors can provide feedback and support that help clarify the narrative. Hearing how others see your story can bring new perspectives and help fill in missing pieces. A clear temporal narrative helps in planning and sticking to long-term habits. It creates a sense of meaning that motivates daily actions. When people see their habits as part of a larger story about who they are and who they want to be, they are more likely to keep those habits even when times get tough. Temporal narrative collapse shows how important a coherent life story is for motivation. It reveals that habits are not just routines, but parts of a bigger picture. Keeping the story clear supports consistent behavior and helps people move forward with purpose. Our bodies hold memories just as much as our minds do. Sometimes a certain physical posture or way of holding ourselves becomes linked to an emotional experience. This connection is called somatic imprinting. These physical habits can anchor old emotional patterns and keep certain behaviors alive, even if we want to change. Imagine a person who always slouches when they feel sad or stressed. The slouch isn't just a habit, but also tied to those emotions. When the person slouches, their body reminds them of past moments of sadness or stress. This posture becomes a way to hold on to those feelings, even when the situation has changed. The body and emotions are linked, creating a loop that keeps the old behavior going. Somatic imprinting works because the brain and body store memories together. When an emotional event happens, the body reacts with changes in posture, breathing, or muscle tension. Over time, these physical responses become connected to the emotions. The next time the body moves into a similar posture, it can bring back the feelings tied to the original event. For example, a person who experienced fear during a difficult conversation might hold their shoulders tight and their chest closed. Later, in new conversations, they might unconsciously adopt the same posture. Their body reacts as if the fear is still present, even if the new situation is safe. This physical habit reinforces old emotional patterns and shapes behavior. This connection can make it hard to change habits or reactions. Even when the mind wants to respond differently, the body pulls the person back to old feelings. For instance, someone trying to be more confident might still shrink their posture or avoid eye contact because their body is tied to past moments of insecurity. Somatic imprinting can also explain why certain places or people trigger strong emotions. When the body returns to a posture linked to a past memory, the feelings connected to that memory resurface. This can cause sudden anxiety or sadness in familiar settings, even as nothing bad is happening now. The body's role in storing emotional memories is part of what some therapists call body memory. This idea suggests that healing emotional wounds often requires working with the body, not just the mind. Changing physical habits can help release old emotions and break the connection to old behaviors. To address somatic imprinting, people can start by noticing their posture and physical reactions in different situations. Paying attention to how the body feels can reveal hidden emotional patterns. For example, noticing tight shoulders or shallow breathing during stress can show how the body holds onto old feelings. Once aware, people can practice new postures and movements to change the body's response. Standing tall, opening the chest, and breathing deeply can create a sense of confidence that the body and mind accept. Over time, these new physical habits can weaken the old emotional patterns tied to posture. Movement practices like yoga, tai chi, or simple stretching can help release tension stored in the body. These activities teach awareness of physical sensations and promote healthier ways of holding the body. This can reduce the power of somatic imprints and support emotional healing. Somatic imprinting shows how closely connected our bodies and emotions are. It reveals that old behaviors aren't just in the mind, but also in physical habits. This connection can hold people back, but it also offers a way forward through the body. Changing behavior means working with both mind and body. When people address physical postures linked to emotions, they can weaken old patterns and build new habits. This process helps create lasting change by breaking the loop between body and emotion. In daily life, simple changes in posture can make a difference. Sitting upright during conversations or standing with relaxed shoulders can shift how people feel inside. These small physical shifts help the mind move away from old emotional patterns and support new ways of being. Somatic imprinting is a reminder that our bodies carry history. Paying attention to physical habits offers clues about emotional patterns and old behaviors. By working with the body, people can unlock new possibilities for change and growth. People often try to find happiness by chasing pleasure directly. They seek out things that feel good in the moment, like tasty food, fun activities, or entertainment. But this approach often backfires. When you focus only on immediate pleasure, long-term satisfaction can fade. This is known as the pleasure paradox. The pleasure paradox means that the more you try to grab pleasure, the less lasting happiness you get. This happens because pleasure comes in bursts, and the brain quickly adapts to it. When something feels good repeatedly, it loses its impact. What once brought joy becomes normal or even boring over time. Imagine someone who loves eating sweets. At first, a piece of cake feels delicious and exciting, but if they eat cake every day, the joy decreases. The sweetness becomes expected, and the thrill fades. The person might then eat even more cake to try to get the same feeling, but it rarely works. The direct pursuit of pleasure has reduced their overall satisfaction. This pattern shows up in many areas of life. People may spend a lot of time on social media because it gives quick hits of pleasure through likes and comments. But after a while, those hits feel less rewarding, and the person might feel empty or restless. The short bursts of pleasure don't add up to deep or lasting happiness. The pleasure paradox also explains why people often feel unsatisfied after big purchases or special events. Buying a new gadget might feel exciting at first, but the excitement usually fades quickly. The happiness from the purchase rarely lasts as long as expected. The same goes for vacations or parties. They can bring intense pleasure, but not always long-term contentment. This happens because pleasure activates the brain's reward system, which is designed for short-term bursts. Dopamine, a brain chemical, spikes during pleasurable moments, but drops quickly afterward. If you chase only these dopamine spikes, your brain becomes less sensitive to pleasure. This means you need more or bigger rewards to feel the same joy. On the other hand, long-term satisfaction comes from things that build meaning and purpose. These might not always feel immediately pleasurable, but offer deeper rewards over time. For example, developing a skill, building relationships, or working toward a goal can bring lasting satisfaction. These activities engage different brain systems that support steady contentment. A person who practices a hobby regularly might not feel pleasure in every session, but over time, they gain a sense of achievement and growth. This leads to a stronger and more stable feeling of well-being than chasing constant pleasure. The focus moves from quick rewards to meaningful progress. The pleasure paradox also connects to self-control. When people try to avoid immediate pleasure to reach long-term goals, they often experience better satisfaction. For example, someone who skips junk food to stay healthy may miss short-term pleasure but enjoy better energy and mood in the long run. Resisting direct pleasure can create space for deeper rewards. At the same time, completely avoiding pleasure can backfire. Balance matters. Pleasure is important for well-being, but chasing it directly without limits tends to reduce its value. Finding pleasure in moderation and mixing it with meaningful activities helps maintain both joy and satisfaction. Understanding the pleasure paradox can help people make better choices about how they seek happiness. Instead of focusing only on what feels good now, they can include activities that build meaning and growth. This approach supports lasting satisfaction and reduces the risk of feeling empty or restless. For example, spending time with friends may not always be thrilling, but it creates bonds and memories that last. Learning something new might be challenging, but it brings a sense of accomplishment. These actions may not give constant pleasure, but contribute to overall well-being. Pleasure paradox reveals that happiness is more complex than just feeling good. Directly chasing pleasure often leads to less satisfaction over time. True contentment comes from a balance between enjoying moments and working toward meaningful goals. This understanding helps people navigate their choices with clearer insight. Your body follows natural rhythms called circadian rhythms. These rhythms control your sleep, energy, and alertness throughout the day. Over time, these rhythms can shift, causing changes in when you feel most awake or tired. This slow change is called chronobiological drift. It can affect the timing of your habits over months or years without you noticing. For example, someone who always woke up early in their 20s might find themselves waking later in their 30s or 40s. The time they feel alert and ready to work or exercise might also change. This shift happens naturally as the body's internal clock moves. It is not a sudden change, but a gradual drift. Chronobiological drift affects many daily habits. People often schedule their activities based on when they feel most energetic. If this peak energy time shifts, their routines might change too. Someone who preferred morning workouts may start feeling tired early and move exercise to the afternoon or evening. Their body signals a new best time for activity. This drift explains why people sometimes feel out of sync with their usual routines. A habit that once fit well into the day may become harder to maintain. For instance, a person who enjoyed reading before bed might find it harder to focus at night as their body clock shifts toward waking earlier. They may then move reading to a different time. Changes in chronobiology also affect sleep patterns. As people age, their sleep often becomes lighter and shorter. They may go to bed earlier and wake up earlier. These changes influence daily schedules and how well habits fit into the day. Someone might feel sleepy during afternoon meetings or lose energy in the evening. Work schedules and social demands often clash with these natural shifts. For example, a person's chronobiological drift might push them to sleep later, but their job requires early starts. This conflict can cause fatigue and make it harder to stick to routines like exercise or meal times. The mismatch between internal rhythms and external demands creates stress. Chronobiological drift happens to everyone, but it varies in speed and extent. Genetics, lifestyle, and environment influence how much your rhythms shift. Exposure to natural light, exercise, and meal timing can help regulate the body clock and reduce drift. People who work night shifts or travel across time zones may experience stronger effects. Understanding chronobiological drift helps explain why some habits change naturally over time. Instead of blaming willpower or motivation, it shows how biology shapes behavior. When a routine feels harder to keep, it might be the body's rhythms shifting rather than personal failure. Adjusting habits to fit new rhythms can improve well-being and success. For example, if you find mornings less productive, try scheduling important tasks for later in the day. Shift workouts or creative work to when your energy peaks. Listening to your body's signals can make routines feel easier and more natural. Chronobiological drift also suggests flexibility is important. Rigid schedules may not work over years as your internal clock changes. Being open to adjusting meal times, sleep schedules, and work periods helps keep habits sustainable. It's about working with your body, not against it. Parents may notice this drift in their children too. Teenagers often experience shifts that make them stay up late and wake late. This natural change clashes with early school times and can affect focus and mood. Schools and families that recognize these patterns can better support young people's habits and health. Technology can influence chronobiological drift as well. Blue light from screens can delay the body clock, making it harder to fall asleep. Over time, this can push rhythms later and disrupt habits tied to earlier times. Reducing screen time before bed or using filters can help protect your natural cycle. In sum, chronobiological drift is a slow change in your body's internal clock that affects when you feel alert or tired. It shifts habit timing naturally over months and years. Recognizing this process helps you adapt habits to fit your biology, leading to better focus, energy, and overall health. Listening to your body and allowing routines to evolve can make daily life smoother and more balanced. Sometimes your behavior changes without you noticing why. Small sensory cues around you can influence your actions without your awareness. This is called subthreshold stimulation. These signals are too weak or too quick for your conscious mind to detect, but they still affect how you think, feel, and behave. Imagine walking into a store where the lighting is soft and the background music is calm. You might feel more relaxed and spend more time browsing, even if you don't realize the effect of the environment. These subtle changes in sight and sound can guide your mood and decisions without you being aware of it. Subthreshold stimulation works because your brain constantly takes in information from your senses, even when you aren't fully paying attention. This sensory data influences your feelings and choices. For example, a faint scent of fresh bread in a bakery can make you more likely to buy something, even if you don't consciously smell it. One classic example is how color affects mood and behavior. Studies show that warm colors like red or orange can increase energy and excitement, while cool colors like blue or green can create calmness. A room painted in certain colors can change how people act inside it, without anyone realizing the influence. Advertising often uses subthreshold stimulation. A company might play a brief, barely noticeable sound or flash a quick image to trigger a positive feeling. You don't consciously see or hear these cues, but your brain picks them up. This can increase your preference for a brand or product without clear awareness. In daily life, subthreshold cues also influence social interactions. A person's tone of voice, body language, or subtle facial expressions can shape your response even if you don't consciously notice them. For instance, a quick smile can make you feel more comfortable and open in conversation. The effects of subthreshold stimulation are not always obvious or strong. They build up over time or combine with other factors to shape behavior. For example, repeated exposure to soft background music in a cafe might slowly make you associate that place with relaxation and comfort. This association influences your future visits and mood there. Subthreshold stimulation can also affect focus and attention. A faint noise or flicker that you don't fully notice might distract you or pull your attention without your conscious mind realizing it. This can change how well you perform tasks, especially in environments with many subtle sensory inputs. Researchers study subthreshold stimulation by showing people images or sounds so briefly or softly that they don't consciously register them. Even then, these signals influence choices or emotions. For instance, people might prefer a product after being exposed to a very quick, positive image linked to it, even though they don't remember seeing the image. The brain's ability to respond to subthreshold stimulation shows how sensitive and complex it is. It processes a lot of information below the level of conscious thought. This helps people react quickly and adapt to their surroundings. But it also means our behavior can be shaped without our clear awareness. Being aware of subthreshold stimulation can help you understand your own actions better. If you notice a change in mood or choice without a clear reason, subtle sensory cues might be at work. This awareness lets you question automatic reactions and make more conscious decisions. Sometimes, you can use subthreshold stimulation to your advantage. For example, setting a calm environment with soft lighting and gentle sounds can help reduce stress and improve focus. Being mindful of how sensory cues affect you supports better control over your behavior. At the same time, it's important to recognize that others might use these subtle cues to influence you. Marketers, designers, and even social groups can shape your behavior through small sensory signals. Knowing this helps you stay alert and make choices that fit your true preferences. Subthreshold stimulation is a quiet but powerful force shaping how you act and feel. It works below the surface of awareness, guiding behavior through tiny sensory inputs. Understanding this process reveals how much of your daily life happens outside your conscious control. This insight offers a chance to see yourself more clearly and make better decisions. When you start a small task but don't finish it, your mind keeps reminding you about it. This happens even if you try to ignore the task. These unfinished actions create mental loops that pull at your attention. This idea is similar to the Ziegarnik Effect, where incomplete tasks stay active in your mind. In tiny habits, these loops can quietly nag you without your awareness. Think about making a simple to-do list. You write down a few small chores like replying to an email or organizing a drawer. If you don't complete one of these tasks, it sticks in your mind. Even if you're focused on something else, the unfinished job keeps surfacing, demanding mental space. This can cause distraction or tension. For example, imagine you start tidying your desk but stop halfway to check your phone. Later, while working, your brain brings back the thought of the messy desk. You might find it hard to concentrate because your mind signals the unfinished task. The task isn't urgent, but the loop keeps pulling at your attention. These loops work because your brain likes to close things out. Completing a task gives a sense of closure and relief. When something is left open, your brain treats it as unfinished business that needs to be resolved. This mental tension stays active until you finish the task or find a way to resolve it. In micro habits, these loops play a big role. Tiny tasks, like sending a quick message or putting away a cup, may seem small, but if left incomplete, they create mental clutter. The brain holds on to these small, unfinished actions, which can build up over time and affect focus and motivation. Imagine someone trying to build a habit of writing daily. If they start a sentence but don't finish the page, the unfinished writing can linger in their mind. This can create a sense of pressure or anxiety, pushing them to return to the task. In this way, the incomplete habit acts like a gentle mental reminder. These loops can work both ways. Sometimes they motivate people to complete tasks to relieve the mental nagging. Other times, they create stress and distraction that make it harder to focus. For instance, if someone has many unfinished small tasks, their mind may feel overwhelmed even if each task is simple. Breaking these loops requires finishing or consciously letting go of the task. Completing the task provides closure and the mental loop stops. But sometimes, finishing isn't possible immediately. In those cases, acknowledging the unfinished task and scheduling a time to complete it can help reduce the nagging. For example, if you can't finish organizing your desk right now, telling yourself, "I will finish this after lunch," helps your brain accept the delay. This clear plan creates a form of mental closure, weakening the loop's pull. Without such a plan, the unfinished task keeps interrupting your focus. Awareness is key in managing these loops. Notice when your attention drifts toward unfinished micro-habits. Instead of pushing the thoughts away, recognize them and decide whether to act or schedule the task. This approach prevents the loops from taking over your mind. Sometimes, breaking tasks into even smaller steps helps. Completing these smaller parts quickly reduces the chance of loops forming. For example, rather than cleaning the whole desk, start by putting away just one item. Finishing that small step gives closure and stops the loop before it grows. Understanding how unfinished tasks affect your mind helps you manage daily habits better. It shows why tiny habits matter and how small actions can influence your focus and motivation. Mental loops from incomplete micro-habits are natural but manageable. The Ziegarnik Effect in micro-habits reveals how your brain tracks unfinished business. These mental loops can push you forward or hold you back, depending on how you handle them. Recognizing this pattern gives you a tool to improve habit formation and daily productivity. People tell themselves stories about who they are. These stories shape how they see their past, present, and future. The mind prefers a clear and consistent self-story, even if parts of that story include bad habits or mistakes. This preference is called the narrative coherence instinct. It means people often stick with a familiar story about themselves rather than change a habit that doesn't fit. Imagine someone who thinks of themselves as a night owl, who stays up late and struggles to wake early. Even if this habit causes problems at work or health, the person might resist changing it. Changing the habit would mean rewriting their self-story, and the mind prefers to keep the story consistent. It feels safer to hold on to the familiar identity, even if it causes difficulties. This instinct helps explain why bad habits can be hard to break. When a habit feels part of your identity, changing it threatens the story you tell yourself. The mind resists because it wants to avoid confusion or conflict. It prefers a stable story, even if that story includes smoking, procrastination, or unhealthy eating. For example, a person who calls themselves not a morning person may skip early workouts. The label supports their habit of sleeping in. Trying to become an early riser challenges that label. This clash can cause discomfort, making it easier to stick with old habits than to change. The narrative coherence instinct also shapes how people explain their behavior. If someone slips into a bad habit, they often find reasons that fit their story, rather than question the story itself. For instance, a person who believes they are bad at saving money might blame their spending on being impulsive or carefree. These explanations keep the story consistent, but also make change harder. This instinct works because the brain likes to reduce uncertainty. A clear story about oneself creates mental stability and helps make decisions quickly. Changing the story requires rethinking who you are and what you value. This process can feel risky or confusing, so the brain prefers to avoid it. Sometimes, people change their self-story gradually without noticing. Small shifts in habits can slowly reshape the narrative. For example, someone who starts waking up 15 minutes earlier every week may eventually see themselves as a morning person. These small changes feel less threatening than trying to switch suddenly, which the brain resists. Social groups influence the self-story too. If your friends or family see you a certain way, it strengthens the story you tell yourself. Changing a habit might mean going against those expectations. This pressure makes sticking to the narrative easier than facing social discomfort. The narrative coherence instinct also explains why people sometimes defend bad habits strongly. They might say, "This is just who I am," or "I've always done it this way." These statements protect the story from being questioned and keep the habit safe. It's a way to reduce inner conflict. To change a habit, people often need to rewrite their self-story intentionally. This means creating a new, consistent story that includes the desired behavior. For example, someone who wants to quit smoking might start telling themselves, "I am a non-smoker now." Repeating this story helps the brain accept the change as part of the identity. Working with the narrative coherence instinct means respecting the need for a stable story while gently guiding it toward new patterns. Abrupt or forced changes can cause resistance, but slow and steady updates feel safer for the mind. Understanding this instinct helps explain why changing habits is about more than willpower. It's about reshaping the story you tell yourself. When the story aligns with new behaviors, change feels natural and lasting. In daily life, paying attention to your self-story can reveal hidden barriers to change. Asking yourself what story supports your habits can show why some changes feel hard. This awareness gives you a chance to rewrite the story in a way that supports growth and improvement. The narrative coherence instinct highlights the power of identity in shaping behavior. It shows that people don't just act, they act as the person they believe they are. Changing habits means changing that belief. This process takes time, patience, and a clear new story to replace the old one. Sometimes, people create problems for themselves before trying something important. This might sound strange, but it happens often. This behavior is called self-handicapping. People do it to protect their ego or self-esteem in case they fail. By making success harder to reach, they have an excuse if things go wrong. Imagine a student who has a big exam coming up. Instead of studying hard, the student spends time with friends or watches TV. If the exam doesn't go well, the student can blame the poor result on not studying enough rather than on a lack of ability. The excuse protects their ego from feeling like they aren't smart. Self-handicapping can look like procrastination, avoiding effort, or creating distractions. People may do this without thinking about it. It's a way to control the story they tell themselves and others about why they succeed or fail. If they do poorly, the failure feels less personal because they already made the outcome more difficult. This behavior appears in many areas, like work, sports, or relationships. For example, an employee who doubts their skills might avoid preparing for a presentation. If the presentation goes badly, they can say, "I didn't have time to prepare," rather than facing the possibility that they need to improve. The excuse shields their self-image. In sports, an athlete might skip training before an important game. If they lose, they have a reason to explain the loss that doesn't hurt their confidence. If they win despite the lack of practice, they feel even more capable. This creates a safety net around their self-esteem. Self-handicapping can feel like a double-edged sword. On one side, it protects people from feeling worthless or incompetent. On the other, it can stop them from reaching their full potential. By creating obstacles, they limit their chances for success. The habit can become a barrier to growth and improvement. Often, self-handicapping starts from fear. People worry about failing and how it might affect how they see themselves or how others see them. To avoid feeling exposed, they sabotage their efforts. This defense makes failure feel less like a personal flaw and more like a result of external factors. This behavior can also be linked to perfectionism. People who set very high standards might fear failure more deeply. Instead of risking failure without an excuse, they create a self-handicap to soften the blow. For example, someone might say, "I wasn't trying my best," before a test or competition, even if they wanted to do well. Self-handicapping often happens without full awareness. People may not realize they are sabotaging themselves. They might think they are just relaxing or prioritizing other things. Recognizing this behavior is the first step to changing it. Breaking the cycle requires honesty and self-reflection. People need to notice when they avoid effort or create excuses. Asking why they do this can reveal the fear behind it. Once understood, they can work on building confidence and facing challenges without needing a safety net. Setting small, achievable goals helps reduce self-handicapping. when people experience success from real effort. They feel safer without excuses. This builds trust in their abilities and lowers the fear of failure. Support from others also matters. Encouragement and constructive feedback can help people feel less afraid of failure. Knowing that mistakes won't damage their worth makes it easier to try without self-sabotage. Self-handicapping may protect the ego in the short term, but it often limits long-term success and happiness. Learning to face challenges openly leads to genuine growth and confidence. People who move past self-handicapping find they can handle setbacks without losing respect for themselves. In everyday life, self-handicapping can show up as putting off tasks, making excuses, or underperforming on purpose. Awareness and a willingness to change help break the habit. This frees people to reach their potential and build a stronger, more honest relationship with themselves. Self-handicapping reveals how much people want to protect their self-esteem. Understanding this behavior helps explain why some struggle to improve despite good intentions. It offers a path toward greater self-acceptance and real progress by facing fears instead of avoiding them. When you watch someone else do something, your brain often copies their actions without you noticing. This happens because of special brain cells called mirror neurons. These neurons activate when you see someone perform an action, making your brain simulate the movement or behavior. This process helps you learn and connect with others, but it also means you pick up habits without realizing it. Imagine sitting with a friend who constantly taps their foot while talking. After a while, you might find yourself tapping your foot too, even if you didn't mean to. This happens because your mirror neurons are responding to their movement, causing you to mimic it. You aren't consciously copying, but your brain is matching their behavior automatically. Mirror neurons play a big role in how people learn new skills. Babies watch their parents and begin to mimic facial expressions, gestures, and sounds. This imitation helps them develop language and social skills. As adults, we continue to learn by observing others, whether it's how to use a tool, speak a language, or behave in social situations. This mirroring can explain why people often pick up habits from those around them. If you spend time with someone who exercises regularly, you might start exercising more without thinking about it. Your brain picks up on their routine and nudges you towards similar behavior. On the other hand, spending time with people who have unhealthy habits can lead you to adopt those habits as well. For example, a person who joins a group of coworkers that eat snacks throughout the day might find themselves snacking more. The behavior becomes normal because the brain is mirroring what others do. This influence can happen quietly and build up over time, shaping daily habits without clear awareness. Mirror neurons also help explain emotional connections. When you see someone smiling or frowning, your brain activates similar feelings. This emotional mirroring makes you empathize with others and understand their mood. It's part of what builds social bonds and helps people relate to each other. Sometimes, mirroring happens in body language during conversations. If someone crosses their arms or leans forward, you might do the same without realizing it. This subtle mimicry creates a sense of rapport and connection. It shows how mirror neurons support not just physical actions, but social harmony. Because mirror neurons operate automatically, they can sometimes work against your goals. If you want to break a bad habit, but spend time around people who practice it, your brain may push you to mimic them. For instance, trying to quit smoking is harder if your friends smoke, because your mirror neurons respond to their actions. Being aware of mirror neuron effects can help you manage habits better. Choosing to spend time with people who support your goals makes it easier to adopt positive behaviors. For example, joining a running group can help you build an exercise habit because your brain mirrors the group's activity. You can also use mirror neurons to motivate yourself. Watching videos of people performing tasks you want to learn can activate your brain's mirroring system. This primes your mind to try those actions, making learning faster and more natural. Mirror neurons show how deeply connected we are to the people around us. They help explain why habits spread in social groups and why people influence each other without words. Our brains are wired to copy and learn from others as a way to survive and belong. In everyday life, this means your habits are not just personal choices, but also shaped by your social environment. Recognizing the power of mirror neurons helps you understand why certain behaviors feel natural or hard to change. It encourages you to pay attention to the company you keep and the examples you follow. Mirror neurons quietly guide much of your behavior by linking what you see to what you do. They help you learn, connect, and adapt. At the same time, they remind you that your habits are often reflections of the people you spend time with. This understanding offers a calm and clear way to think about how habits form and change. When people struggle to name their feelings, they often find it hard to understand what drives them. This is called the emotional granularity gap. Emotional granularity means having a clear, detailed vocabulary for emotions. When people lack this, their urges become unclear. This confusion can lead to bad habits because they don't know how to respond to their feelings in a healthy way. Imagine someone feeling bad, but not knowing why. The feeling could be sadness, boredom, frustration, or loneliness, but all these emotions get lumped together as bad. Without a clear label, it's harder to figure out what to do next. The person might reach for a quick fix, like junk food or distraction, to escape the unclear feeling. This response can become a bad habit. For example, a person might say, "I'm stressed," but really they are tired or overwhelmed. If they only know the word stress, they miss the chance to address the real issue. They might cope by scrolling through their phone or smoking a cigarette. These actions provide short relief, but don't solve the underlying feeling, leading to repeated bad habits. People with high emotional granularity can recognize subtle differences in their feelings. Instead of just sad, they might notice disappointed, lonely, or hopeless. This clarity helps them choose better ways to respond. For example, feeling disappointed might lead to talking with a friend, while lonely might encourage reaching out to someone. Poor emotional vocabulary also affects motivation. When urges are vague, people can feel stuck or confused about what they want. This makes it easier to fall into habits that feel automatic but don't help. For instance, feeling off without knowing why can push someone to procrastinate or avoid problems rather than face them. Emotional granularity influences decision-making. When people can name their feelings accurately, they make choices that fit their needs. If someone knows they feel anxious, they might try deep breathing or a walk. If the feeling is just bad, the response might be less helpful, like binge-watching TV or overeating. Children and adults both benefit from developing emotional vocabulary. Teaching kids words for different feelings helps them express themselves and manage emotions better. Adults who expand their emotional vocabulary often improve their mental health and reduce harmful habits. Language plays a big role in emotional granularity. People from different cultures or backgrounds may have more or fewer words for feelings. Some languages have unique words for emotions that others don't. This shows how important words are for shaping how people experience and handle their emotions. Poor emotional granularity can lead to misunderstandings in relationships too. If someone can't clearly describe their feelings, others may misinterpret their behavior. For example, a partner might see anger but miss the sadness underneath. This can create conflicts or distance because emotions stay unclear. Improving emotional granularity starts with paying attention to feelings. Journaling about emotions, talking with others, or using feelings lists can help build vocabulary. Over time, people become more aware of subtle emotional states and better at naming them. When urges become clearer, people can create healthier habits. Instead of reacting to a vague, bad feeling, they respond to a specific emotion with a fitting action. This reduces the chance of falling back on harmful habits as a way to cope. The emotional granularity gap also explains why some people struggle with impulsive behavior, Without clear emotional signals, impulses feel urgent but confusing. This leads to quick actions that don't solve problems, like anger outbursts or risky choices. Recognizing this gap offers a path to better self-understanding. Naming emotions precisely helps people face their feelings honestly. This honesty supports more thoughtful responses and reduces the grip of bad habits. In daily life, being able to say, "I feel anxious about this meeting," instead of "I feel bad," makes a big difference. It gives a clearer picture of what's happening inside and what to do next. This clarity builds stronger habits and healthier ways to handle emotions. Emotional granularity bridges feelings and actions. When the bridge is weak, urges become confusing and habits suffer. Strengthening this bridge helps people live more aware, balanced, and controlled lives. Your past choices shape your present behavior more than you might realize. This happens because earlier habits and decisions create patterns that influence what you can do now. This idea is called path dependency lock-in. Once you start down a certain path, it becomes harder to change direction. Your past locks you into certain options and limits your current choices. Think about someone who has always taken the same route to work. Over time, this route becomes automatic. Even if a faster or easier way opens up, the person might stick to the old path because it feels familiar. The habit locks them in, limiting their ability to adapt to new possibilities. Path dependency lock-in affects more than simple routines. It shapes bigger behaviors and decisions too. For example, a person who has smoked for years finds it hard to quit. Their body and mind are used to smoking as a way to cope with stress or social situations. This long history creates a strong pull back to the old habit, making change difficult. Early habits build mental and physical patterns. These patterns create comfort zones where behavior feels natural and safe. Trying something new outside the zone feels uncertain or risky. This discomfort pushes people to stick with what they know, even if better options exist. For instance, someone who learned to manage stress by eating junk food may find it tough to switch to exercise. The old habit is easy and familiar, while the new one requires effort and change. The history of the junk food habit locks them into that pattern, making new behaviors harder to adopt. Path dependency lock-in also applies to skills and knowledge. If you learned a certain way of working or thinking early on, you might find it hard to adjust to new methods. A professional used to a specific process may resist changes at work because the old way feels more natural. The investment in previous learning creates a lock-in effect. This lock-in happens because changing behavior takes energy and effort. The brain prefers routines because they save mental resources. When a habit is well established, the brain runs it automatically. Trying to change demands conscious attention and often triggers discomfort, which makes it easy to fall back into old patterns. Social factors reinforce lock-in too. If your friends, family, or colleagues follow certain habits, you're more likely to stay on the same path. Changing your behavior might mean going against the group or facing criticism, which adds to the resistance. The social environment locks you in as much as your own habits. Sometimes path dependency lock-in leads to frustration. People want to change but feel stuck. They might try new approaches but quickly return to old habits. This cycle happens because the initial behavior built strong neural and social connections that are hard to break. Breaking free from lock-in requires awareness and intentional effort. First, recognizing how past habits limit your current choices helps you see the challenge clearly. This understanding makes it easier to plan changes that fit your situation. Next, gradual change works better than sudden shifts. Small steps let you build new patterns without overwhelming your brain or social circle. For example, a smoker might reduce cigarettes slowly rather than quitting all at once. This slow change weakens the old habits' hold. Creating new routines that replace old ones also helps. If stress triggers junk food eating, finding a new stress relief like walking or meditation builds a new path. Over time, the new habit strengthens and loosens the grip of the old. Support from others can ease the process. Encouragement and understanding reduce social pressure to stick with old behaviors. Joining groups with new habits or goals provides fresh social connections that reinforce change. Path dependency lock-in is a natural part of how behavior works. It shows how deeply our past shapes our present. It also explains why change often feels so hard. Your habits are not just choices. They are patterns built over time that guide your actions. Knowing about lock-in gives you a tool to manage change more wisely. Instead of blaming yourself for being stuck, you can see the patterns and work with them. Change becomes a process of creating new paths, not just fighting old ones. Your past behavior sets the stage for your present options. The more you understand this, the better you can navigate your habits and choices. Path dependency lock-in is not a barrier, but a signal of where your energy should focus for real change. Many habits come from the culture around us, often without us realizing it. These are internalized cultural scripts, patterns of behavior we adopt because society expects them, not because we consciously choose them. These scripts shape how we act daily, guiding habits that feel natural but may not always serve us well. For example, think about how people greet each other. In some cultures, shaking hands is standard. In others, a bow or cheek kiss is the norm. People follow these habits automatically because they learned them from their environment. They rarely stop to think if this way of greeting fits them personally. It's just what they do. Internalized cultural scripts go deeper than simple gestures. They affect habits around work, family, food, and even how we manage time. In some societies, working long hours without complaint is seen as a virtue. People internalize this script and push themselves to work non-stop, even if it harms their health. They do this because the culture values hard work and sacrifice, not because they've thought through what's best for themselves. Take the example of meal habits. Many cultures have specific eating routines, 3 meals a day, always eating together as a family, or certain foods considered proper at each meal. People follow these patterns because they learned them growing up. If someone tries to change these habits, they might feel uncomfortable or face criticism because they're going against a cultural script. These scripts often operate silently. People don't question why they do certain things because the habits feel normal. For instance, a person might always say thank you in a very formal way because that's how politeness is shown in their culture. They rarely stop to consider if a different way might feel more genuine or effective. Internalized cultural scripts can shape gender roles too. In some cultures, women are expected to take care of the home while men work outside. These roles become habits in daily life. People follow them because society teaches these patterns early on. Even if someone wants to live differently, the cultural script pulls them back into familiar roles. Social norms about appearance also create habits. Dressing a certain way for work or events comes from cultural expectations. People may spend time and money to meet these standards without thinking about whether it suits their personality or comfort. The internalized script guides behavior to fit in and avoid judgment. Because these scripts are learned from a young age, they feel natural and right. Questioning them can feel like going against the grain or risking social rejection. This makes it hard to change habits rooted in cultural scripts. Sometimes, cultural scripts conflict with personal values or goals. For example, someone might value rest and balance but live in a culture that praises constant busyness. They might struggle to take breaks or say no to extra work because the cultural script pressures them to keep going. This conflict can cause stress and confusion. Recognizing internalized cultural scripts requires reflection and awareness. Asking why you do certain things helps uncover if a habit comes from your own choice or cultural expectation. For example, you might ask yourself why you work late or eat certain foods and whether these habits truly serve you. Changing habits based on cultural scripts is possible, but often slow. It involves creating new personal stories and finding support from others who share your views. For instance, joining a group that values work-life balance can help break the script of overwork. Sometimes, adapting cultural scripts rather than rejecting them works better. You might keep some habits but modify them to fit your needs. For example, keeping family meals but changing the time or menu to suit your lifestyle respects tradition while creating space for personal choice. Internalized cultural scripts remind us that habits are not just personal but social. They show how deeply culture influences behavior, often without us noticing. Understanding this influence helps people make more conscious choices and live in ways that align better with their true selves. In daily life, this means paying attention to what habits feel automatic and asking where they come from. Are you following a cultural script or acting from your own intention? This awareness opens the door to change and greater freedom in how you live. When people feel guilty, they sometimes react by punishing themselves. This punishment can take many forms, like denying themselves pleasure, working too hard, or repeating harmful habits. This cycle, known as the self-punishment loop, keeps guilt alive and makes it harder to break free from negative behaviors. Imagine someone who misses a workout and then feels guilty. Instead of simply moving on, they punish themselves by skipping meals or over-exercising the next day. The guilt triggers behavior meant to make up for the mistake, but it often causes more harm than good. The punishment feeds the guilt, which then leads to more self-punishing actions. The self-punishment loop works because guilt feels uncomfortable and painful. People try to reduce this pain by controlling themselves or showing discipline. They believe that punishment will fix the problem or prove they are responsible. But this approach often backfires. Instead of healing guilt, punishment keeps it active and makes people feel worse. This loop appears in many habits. Someone trying to quit smoking might feel guilty after a slip. Instead of forgiving themselves, they might smoke more or avoid trying again. The guilt leads to behavior that punishes their sense of failure, but also keeps the habit going. This cycle traps them in the very problem they want to solve. Self-punishment can also show up as harsh self-talk. A person might tell themselves they are lazy or stupid after making a mistake. This mental punishment reinforces feelings of guilt and lowers motivation. The negative thoughts create a loop that makes change harder. Sometimes people use punishment to control anxiety or stress. For example, someone might work excessively long hours to earn forgiveness for feeling anxious. The punishment distracts from the real issue but doesn't resolve the underlying feelings. Instead, it creates exhaustion and burnout. The loop often grows stronger because punishment feels like a way to regain control. When life feels chaotic, people turn to strict self-discipline or punishment to feel safe. However, this control is fragile. It depends on maintaining guilt, which keeps the cycle alive. Breaking the self-punishment loop requires recognizing it first. People need to notice when guilt pushes them toward harmful behavior instead of positive change. This awareness creates space to choose a different response. One way to break the loop is to replace punishment with self-compassion. Instead of harsh judgments, people can treat themselves with kindness and understanding. For example, after missing a workout, saying, "It's okay to rest today. I can try again tomorrow," reduces guilt and supports healthy habits. Forgiveness is also key. Accepting that mistakes happen and don't define worth helps stop the cycle. Forgiveness allows people to learn from errors without falling into punishment. This shift strengthens motivation and confidence. Setting realistic goals helps too. When expectations are too high, guilt grows stronger with every slip. Smaller, achievable steps reduce the chance of guilt turning into punishment. For instance, aiming for 3 workouts a week instead of daily exercise makes success more likely. Support from others makes a difference. Talking about guilt and punishment with friends or professionals can provide perspective and encouragement. Others can help challenge negative self-beliefs and offer compassion. The self-punishment loop shows how emotions shape behavior. Guilt isn't just a feeling. It drives actions that often harm rather than heal. Understanding this loop helps people respond differently, moving from punishment to care. In everyday life, noticing when guilt leads to self-punishment opens a path to healthier habits. This awareness creates a chance to choose kindness over harm. It turns guilt from a trap into a guide for change. The self-punishment loop reveals how deeply emotions influence habits. It shows the importance of compassion in breaking harmful cycles. By shifting from punishment to understanding, people build stronger, more positive habits over time. People switch between 2 different ways of thinking that affect how they form and keep habits. These are called the Paratelic and Telic modes. The Paratelic mode focuses on play, fun, and immediate enjoyment. The Telic mode centers on goals, achievement, and future rewards. Knowing how these modes work can explain why motivation for habits changes and how to balance both for better results. When you are in the Paratelic mode, you act mainly for the pleasure of the moment. You do things because they feel fun, exciting, or interesting right now. This mode encourages exploration and creativity. For example, someone might try a new sport simply because it looks enjoyable. The focus is on the activity itself, not on winning or achieving a specific outcome. In contrast, the Telic mode pushes you to focus on goals and future rewards. You work hard because you want to reach a target, like losing weight or finishing a project. The motivation comes from what happens later, not from immediate enjoyment. A person in Telic mode might run every day to prepare for a marathon or meet a deadline. Both modes play a role in habits, but they affect motivation differently. Habits formed in the Telic mode rely on discipline and planning. People stick to routines because they want to achieve something important. However, this focus on future goals can sometimes feel stressful or boring. When motivation comes only from the Telic mode, habits may break if the goal feels too far away or difficult. On the other hand, habits formed in the Paratelic mode are driven by enjoyment. When habits feel playful or fun, people want to repeat them. For instance, someone who enjoys dancing might practice regularly because it feels good, not because of any specific goal. These habits often feel easier to keep because the reward is immediate. The challenge is that life requires switching between these modes. Sometimes you need to focus on goals and work hard, Telic, and other times you need to relax and enjoy the moment, Paratelic. People who balance these modes tend to have better motivation and happier habits. For example, consider a student studying for exams. If they stay only in Telic mode, they may become stressed and lose interest. But if they find ways to make studying fun, like turning it into a game or studying with friends, they bring Paratelic motivation into the habit. This mix makes it easier to keep going. Sometimes people get stuck in one mode. Being only in Telic mode can cause burnout and boredom. Being only in Paratelic mode might lead to distraction and lack of progress. Understanding these modes helps explain why motivation rises and falls with habits. Switching between modes can also explain procrastination. When a task feels too serious or hard, Telic, people may avoid it and seek fun distractions, Paratelic. This shift happens naturally because the brain wants to feel good. Recognizing this can help people find ways to re-engage with the task by adding elements of play or breaking it into smaller parts. Workplaces and schools can support habit formation by balancing these modes. Providing clear goals and rewards taps into Telic motivation. Allowing breaks, social interaction, and creative activities introduces paratelic motivation. This balance helps people stay productive without losing interest. In daily life, knowing your dominant mode can guide how you approach habits. If you find yourself getting bored or stressed, try adding playful elements. If you get distracted or lack direction, set clear goals to focus your effort. Paratelic and telic modes show that motivation isn't one size fits all. People move between wanting immediate enjoyment and long-term success. The healthiest habits come from respecting both needs, enjoying the moment while keeping an eye on the goal. This understanding also helps explain why some habits last longer than others. Habits tied only to future goals may falter if the goal seems far off. Habits rooted in enjoyment tend to stick because they reward you every time. Balancing play-driven and goal-driven states creates a stronger foundation for lasting habits. It supports steady motivation and prevents fatigue or boredom. By shifting smoothly between paratelic and telic modes, people build habits that fit both their needs and realities. In short, switching between play and goal modes changes how habits motivate us. Knowing this helps you design habits that are both rewarding now and useful later. This balance makes habit formation more natural and sustainable. Sometimes you think you've finished a task, but part of it still lingers beneath the surface. This happens because there's a deeper layer left unresolved. You only feel truly done when every part is complete. This idea connects to the Ziegarnik Effect, which says unfinished tasks stay active in your mind. But here, the unfinished part may not be obvious. It hides beneath what seems finished. Imagine cleaning your desk. You put away papers, wipe the surface, and feel satisfied. But later, you notice a small pile of unread mail you ignored. That pile is the deeper layer left unresolved. Even though you believe the desk is clean, your mind knows the job isn't fully done. This hidden part keeps pulling your attention, making it hard to relax completely. This effect works because your brain craves closure. Finishing a task brings relief and frees mental space. If a deeper issue remains, your brain holds on to it like a reminder. This partial completion feels like an open loop, causing distraction or discomfort. For example, a student might submit a paper but feel uneasy. They might realize they didn't fully check sources or missed a section. The work feels done on the surface, but the unresolved part nags at them. This tension can make it hard to focus on new tasks. Sometimes the unresolved layer isn't a specific task, but a feeling or question. A person might have a difficult conversation that seems over, yet they replay parts in their mind. The conversation feels finished, but unspoken thoughts or emotions remain. This internal gap creates a hidden unfinished loop. This deeper layer can also appear in habits. You might stop dieting for the day, but feel guilty about eating one snack. The snack represents a small unresolved part of your goal. Your brain registers the habit as incomplete, keeping the urge or guilt alive. The disguised Ziegarnik Effect explains why some tasks feel hard to let go. The surface is done, but the hidden part keeps you mentally engaged. This can affect productivity and stress levels. You might find yourself returning to a task mentally, even when you are physically away from it. Awareness helps. When you notice discomfort after finishing something, check if there's a deeper layer left. Maybe a detail wasn't handled, or a feeling wasn't expressed. Identifying this lets you address the hidden part and find true closure. Sometimes, breaking tasks into smaller steps helps. Completing each step fully reduces hidden, unfinished parts. For instance, when cleaning, include sorting through mail as a specific step. This way, no part hides beneath the surface. It's also useful to accept that some layers may not be fully resolvable immediately. A tough conversation might need time before you feel complete. Recognizing this helps reduce frustration and lets you set a plan to return later. In relationships, this effect shows why people revisit old issues mentally. Even if the situation is closed, unresolved feelings keep it active inside. Talking openly or reflecting can help uncover these layers and ease the mental load. Work environments can trigger this effect when projects feel finished, but key details remain unchecked. Teams may move on too quickly, causing stress or mistakes later. Encouraging thorough review and reflection reduces hidden unfinished work. Understanding the disguised Ziegarnik Effect helps explain why done isn't always done. It shows how deeper layers influence your mind long after surface tasks end. This awareness guides you to seek real closure by finding and addressing hidden parts. In daily life, this means paying attention to lingering thoughts or feelings after finishing tasks. Asking if anything remains unresolved uncovers hidden loops. Resolving these brings relief, clearer focus, and peace of mind. This effect reminds you that completion is more than crossing off a list. True completion happens when every layer, seen or unseen, is handled. Recognizing the disguised, unfinished parts helps you manage your mental energy better and keep moving forward. The stories we hear and see don't just entertain us, they shape how we act and react. This is the idea behind mythic echo conditioning. When you consume stories, they leave echoes in your mind that influence your instincts and behaviors. Over time, these echoes shape what feels natural or right in different situations. Think about a child who grows up hearing stories about heroes who always stand up for others. These stories teach values like courage and kindness. The child internalizes these lessons and may instinctively act bravely when they see someone in trouble. The stories echo inside their mind, guiding behavior without a conscious decision. Mythic echo conditioning doesn't happen only in childhood. Adults also absorb stories from movies, books, news, and culture. For example, if someone regularly watches shows where characters solve problems by staying calm and thinking clearly, they may learn to respond similarly in real life. The stories condition them to approach challenges with patience and logic. This effect happens because stories tap into deep parts of the brain that govern emotion and instinct. Stories create mental models, pictures, and ideas that your mind uses to understand the world. When you face a situation, your brain pulls from these models to decide how to act. If your stories emphasize kindness, you'll likely respond kindly. If they highlight conflict and competition, your instincts may lean toward aggression or defense. Consider the difference between two people raised with different story influences. One grows up with tales of teamwork and cooperation. The other hears stories focused on winning at all costs. Their instincts around working with others will differ. The first may naturally seek collaboration, while the second might be more competitive. These patterns form quietly, echoing in decisions and habits. Stories also shape how people view themselves. Someone who identifies with the story of an underdog who succeeds against odds may develop resilience and persistence. They expect challenges but feel capable of overcoming them. This internal narrative influences daily habits like how they handle setbacks or keep trying after failure. Advertising often uses mythic echo conditioning by telling stories that connect products to desirable traits. A commercial showing a strong, adventurous person using a product suggests that buying it will echo that story inside you. You might feel more drawn to the product because it fits the story you want to tell about yourself. The stories you consume also shape your fears and anxieties. If you often hear stories about danger or betrayal, your instincts may lean toward caution or mistrust. This can affect your behavior in relationships and social settings. The mental echoes create habits of watchfulness or withdrawal, even if no immediate threat exists. Recognizing mythic echo conditioning helps you understand why some habits or reactions feel automatic. You might wonder why you react a certain way in a conflict or why some choices feel natural. These responses often come from the stories you've absorbed over time. To work with this conditioning, pay attention to the stories you consume. Choose stories that support the values and behaviors you want to develop. Reading about kindness, perseverance, and cooperation can reinforce those instincts. Avoid stories that trigger negative or unhelpful patterns if possible. You can also create your own story about yourself. When facing a challenge, tell yourself a story where you succeed by acting the way you want to. These personal narratives echo in your mind and shape how you behave. They become a guide for action that feels natural and confident. In groups or cultures, shared stories create collective behavior. Communities tell stories that reflect their values, which shape how members act and relate to each other. Understanding this shows how culture influences personal habits and instincts. Mythic echo conditioning reveals how deeply stories shape who you are. They form the backdrop of your instincts and guide behavior beyond conscious choice. By choosing and creating positive stories, you can change those echoes and build habits that serve you better. Stories are more than entertainment. They are templates for life. They teach your brain how to respond, what to value, and how to act. Paying attention to the stories you carry lets you take charge of the echoes that shape your habits and instincts. Your brain constantly makes predictions about what will happen next. These predictions come from past experiences and habits. When reality doesn't match what your brain expects, a prediction error occurs. This is called predictive coding error. It happens when your brain expects habitual outcomes, but the situation has changed. Understanding this helps explain why habits can be hard to change, even when the world around you is different. Imagine you always take the same route to work. Your brain expects to find traffic lights and familiar signs along the way. One day, the city changes the traffic pattern, but you still drive as if nothing has changed. You might miss a new stop sign or turn the wrong way because your brain predicted the old route. The difference between expectation and reality is a predictive coding error. These errors happen because the brain relies on habits to save energy. It uses predictions to prepare for action without thinking through every detail. Habits are shortcuts, and the brain trusts them. When the environment changes, the brain sometimes fails to update quickly. This leads to mistakes or confusion. For example, someone who drinks coffee every morning at the same cafe expects the same service and taste. If the cafe changes its menu or staff, the person might still expect the old experience. When reality differs, they might feel disappointed or confused. Their brain's prediction did not match the new situation. Predictive coding errors also occur in social interactions. If you expect a friend to respond in a certain way based on past behavior, you might misread their reaction when they act differently. This mismatch can cause misunderstanding or frustration. The brain's habit of predicting social cues sometimes leads to errors when people change. These errors explain why people can resist change. When habits no longer fit reality, the brain's predictions feel wrong. But because habits are automatic, people keep acting as if nothing has changed. This resistance slows adaptation and makes change uncomfortable. For example, someone trying to quit smoking might expect cravings to behave a certain way based on past attempts. When their cravings feel different or unexpected, their brain's prediction fails. This can cause confusion and lead to relapse because the brain doesn't recognize the new pattern. The brain updates its predictions by comparing expectation with reality. When errors happen, the brain slowly adjusts its model to fit new information. However, this process takes time and effort. Strong habits create strong predictions, which take longer to change. Sometimes, the brain ignores small changes to maintain stability. If a change feels minor or confusing, the brain may stick to old predictions. This can create a gap between how you act and what's actually happening around you. Being aware of predictive coding errors helps you notice when habits don't match reality. You can slow down and check if your expectations fit the current situation. For example, driving a new route with attention instead of relying on habit helps avoid errors. Breaking habits involves creating new predictions. Repeated practice of new behavior updates the brain's model. For example, practicing mindfulness helps notice when your mind assumes things that aren't true. This awareness supports changing automatic responses. In learning, predictive coding errors play a key role. When a mistake happens, the brain detects the error and adjusts how it approaches the task. This trial and error process leads to better skill and knowledge over time. Predictive coding errors show how much the brain depends on expectations. Habits feel natural because the brain predicts outcomes and prepares you to act without delay. When reality changes, these predictions can fail, causing mistakes or discomfort. Understanding this process makes it easier to accept why change is hard. Your brain isn't trying to resist you. It's trying to keep predictions accurate and energy low. Change requires updating these predictions through repeated experience and attention. In everyday life, you can use this knowledge to improve habits. Notice when your actions don't fit the situation. Question automatic thoughts and responses. Practice new behaviors with focus. Over time, your brain will update its predictions, and the new habits will feel natural. Predictive coding errors remind you that your brain is a prediction machine. It wants to keep things simple by using past habits. When the world shifts, your brain needs help to catch up. Being patient and aware helps you guide your brain toward better, more accurate predictions and healthier habits. When you are under stress, your sense of time can change. Sometimes time feels like it moves very fast. Other times, it seems to drag on slowly. This change in how you experience time is called neurotemporal compression. It affects how you perceive your habits and the actions you take during stressful moments. Imagine being in a rush to meet a deadline. Everything feels like it is speeding up. You may notice minutes fly by, and you feel like you have less time than you actually do. This compression of time makes your brain work harder to keep up. You might rush through tasks or skip steps in your usual routine. Your habits, which normally take a set amount of time, now feel squeezed and less controlled. On the other hand, in some stressful situations, time slows down. Think of a tense moment, like waiting for test results or an important phone call. Every second seems to stretch longer. This expansion of time can make you more aware of your habits, but also increase anxiety. You might replay actions over and over in your mind, or feel stuck in a routine that normally feels natural. Neurotemporal compression changes how you experience your habits because habits rely on consistent timing and rhythm. When your sense of time shifts, your habits can feel disrupted. For example, a person who usually exercises for 30 minutes might feel like the session lasts forever during a stressful day, making it harder to keep going. Or someone who normally spends a short time on social media might suddenly find those minutes dragging, causing them to lose track of time. Stress triggers these changes in time perception through brain chemicals like adrenaline. Adrenaline prepares your body to respond quickly by sharpening focus and speeding up processing. This can make time feel faster as your brain tries to handle more information at once. But high stress can also overload your brain, causing time to feel slow when you become overly aware of each moment. Because of neurotemporal compression, your judgment of how long a habit takes can become unreliable. You might overestimate or underestimate the time needed, leading to poor planning or frustration. For example, you might believe a routine task should take less time during a stressful day, pushing yourself too hard and burning out. This shift in time perception can also affect motivation. When time feels compressed, you may rush through habits without fully engaging, lowering satisfaction and reducing the chance the habit will stick. When time feels expanded, stress might make you avoid habits because they seem to last too long or feel overwhelming. Understanding neurotemporal compression helps explain why habits change under stress. It shows that your brain's sense of time plays a role in how you act. When time feels off, habits can lose their usual flow, causing disruptions. To manage this, try to slow down and bring awareness to your actions during stress. Taking deep breaths, you're pausing briefly, can help recalibrate your sense of time. This supports smoother habits, even when your internal clock feels off. Breaking habits into smaller steps also helps. When you focus on one small action at a time, the distorted sense of time becomes less important. You create mini routines that feel manageable despite stress. Planning for stress can improve habit consistency. Knowing that time perception will shift allows you to build flexibility into your routines. For example, you might allow extra time for tasks on stressful days, or choose simpler versions of habits when time feels compressed. Neurotemporal compression reminds you that how you experience time is not fixed. Your brain changes its rhythm depending on your emotional state. This influences how you act and how your habits feel. By recognizing these shifts, you can adjust your habits to fit your current sense of time. This awareness creates space to maintain habits even when stress changes your internal clock. In daily life, stress and time go hand in hand. When you feel rushed or stuck, it's often your brain's way of handling pressure. Understanding neurotemporal compression offers a clear view of why habits sometimes falter and how you can respond with calm and control. Time may bend under stress, but your habits don't have to break. Learning to work with these changes helps you keep steady progress no matter what your brain's clock says. Sometimes, the way you think about your habits can make it hard to stick with them. This happens when you frame your habits either too broadly or too narrowly. When the goal feels vague or overly specific, motivation suffers. This problem is called behavioral abstraction misfit. Imagine you set a goal to be healthy. It sounds good, but it's very broad. What does being healthy really mean? Does it mean eating better, exercising more, sleeping enough, or something else? Because it's so general, you might feel overwhelmed or unsure where to start. Without clear steps, it's easy to lose motivation and give up. On the other hand, setting a goal like do 3 push-ups every day is very narrow. It's clear and specific, but it might feel too small or unimportant. After doing 3 push-ups for a while, you might think it's not enough to make a difference. This can lead to boredom or feeling like the effort isn't worth it, which can also kill motivation. Both extremes cause problems because they don't match what you need to stay motivated. When a habit is too broad, it's hard to measure progress or see success. When it's too narrow, it might not feel meaningful or rewarding enough to keep going. For example, someone who wants to be healthy might start a list of things they could do: eat vegetables, drink water, walk daily, sleep early, and so on. This list can quickly feel overwhelming. Without a clear focus, it's easy to feel stuck and do nothing. Conversely, someone who chooses do 3 push-ups daily might complete the task, but feel like it's too easy or pointless. They may skip the habit because it doesn't feel like real progress. The narrow focus makes the habit less satisfying. Finding the right balance between broad and narrow is key. Good habits are specific enough to guide action, but broad enough to feel meaningful. For example, walk for 20 minutes each day is clear and measurable, but still broad enough to cover different routes or paces. Another example is eat 1 serving of vegetables at lunch. This habit is specific, but connects to the bigger goal of healthier eating. It feels doable and relevant. The habit is small enough to start, but meaningful enough to motivate you. Behavioral abstraction misfit also explains why some people start new habits with excitement but quickly lose interest. They may have set a vague goal like get fit without clear steps, or they focus on a tiny task that doesn't feel rewarding, leading to boredom. This misfit can affect other areas like work or learning. If your goal is improve communication skills, it's broad and hard to measure. You might not know what to practice. If you pick a very narrow goal, like practice saying hello, it feels too simple to keep up motivation. To fix this, try breaking broad goals into clear, achievable steps. Choose habits that connect to your larger aim but feel concrete enough to do regularly. At the same time, avoid tasks so small they feel meaningless. Tracking progress helps too. When you see improvement, even in small habits, motivation grows. This feedback loop encourages you to keep going and build momentum. You can also adjust habits over time. Start with something narrow to build confidence, then gradually expand it. For instance, begin with 3 push-ups and increase the number as it becomes easier. This growth keeps the habit challenging and meaningful. Understanding behavioral abstraction Misfit helps you set habits that work for you. It shows why some goals feel frustrating or pointless and how to fix them. By matching the right level of detail, you create habits that motivate and support long-term success. In daily life, pay attention to how you frame your habits. If you feel stuck or unmotivated, ask if the habit is too vague or too narrow. Adjusting the focus can make a big difference in your ability to keep going. This insight helps you design habits that feel natural and rewarding. It turns vague wishes into clear actions and simple tasks into meaningful progress. Finding the right balance is key to building habits that last. Sometimes you carry out habits without really being aware of what you're doing. Your body moves and acts, but your mind seems to drift away. This is called microdissociation. It's like your mind disappears for a moment while your body runs on autopilot. This state often happens during routine actions that don't need much thought. Imagine brushing your teeth in the morning. Your hands move the brush back and forth, but your mind might be somewhere else, thinking about the day ahead or replaying a conversation from yesterday. You finish brushing without paying full attention. Your body completes the habit while your mind is partly disconnected. Microdissociation is common during daily routines. When you do the same thing repeatedly, your brain doesn't need to focus fully. This frees up mental energy to think about other things. But it also means you lose some awareness of the present moment and what you're doing. For example, when driving a familiar route, many people find themselves zoning out. They arrive at their destination with little memory of the trip. Their body followed the habit of driving safely, but their mind was elsewhere. This microdissociation can be helpful for multitasking, but it can also be risky if attention lapses at the wrong moment. Microdissociation can affect how you view your habits. Because your mind isn't fully present, you might not remember details of your behavior. This can make it harder to change habits, since you're not always aware of what triggers them or how you react. The habit runs quietly beneath your conscious awareness. This state is linked to the brain's automatic processing. When habits are well learned, they move from conscious control to automatic control. Your brain handles these actions without needing to focus. Microdissociation happens because your conscious mind can drift, while the automatic system keeps working. Sometimes, microdissociation occurs during stressful or emotional times. When feelings overwhelm you, your mind might detach briefly to protect itself. The body continues routines without full mental engagement. For example, someone upset might clean the house mechanically, not really noticing what they're doing. While microdissociation can help you manage everyday tasks, it can also create problems. When you disappear mentally, you may miss important details or forget steps. This can lead to mistakes or unsafe situations. For instance, a distracted cook might forget an ingredient or burn food because their mind wandered. To reduce unwanted microdissociation, practicing mindfulness helps. Mindfulness means paying attention to the present moment with curiosity and without judgment. When you bring awareness to your habits, you reduce the chance your mind will drift away. For example, noticing the taste and texture while eating keeps you engaged and may reduce overeating. Another way to counter microdissociation is to change your routine. Introducing variety or small challenges forces your brain to stay alert. For example, taking a new route home or trying a different workout prevents habits from becoming fully automatic and keeps your mind present. Understanding microdissociation also helps explain why some habits feel automatic and hard to change. If your mind is often off during a habit, you might miss cues that prompt the behavior. Becoming more aware helps you notice these cues and gives you a chance to change your response. In relationships, microdissociation can affect how you connect with others. If your mind drifts during conversations or shared activities, people might feel ignored or misunderstood. Being present, even during routine moments, strengthens connection and communication. Microdissociation is a natural part of how your brain works to save energy and manage tasks. It allows your mind to rest while your body keeps going. But too much of it can disconnect you from your actions and surroundings. In daily life, learning to notice when your mind drifts helps you regain control over habits. Bringing attention back to what you're doing anchors you in the moment. This awareness supports better choices and safer actions. Your habits run quietly in the background, but your mind doesn't have to. With practice, you can stay more present and engaged, even during routine tasks. This balance between automatic action and mindful awareness helps you live more fully and intentionally. When you start a task but don't finish it, your mind keeps reminding you about it. This happens because incomplete tasks create mental friction that drives your behavior. This idea is known as the Ziegarnik Effect. It means unfinished jobs stay active in your memory, pushing you to complete them. Imagine you begin writing an email but get distracted before you finish. Even if you switch to something else, your mind keeps returning to that unfinished message. The feeling nags at you because your brain wants closure. This mental tension motivates you to go back and complete the email. The Ziegarnik Effect explains why to-do lists feel so important. Each unfinished task is like a small weight on your mind. You feel pressure to finish these tasks to relieve that mental friction. This is why checking off completed items can bring a sense of relief and satisfaction. For example, a student who starts studying for an exam but stops halfway might find it hard to focus on anything else. The unfinished work remains active in their mind, creating a push to return and finish studying. This effect can work as a motivator or, if overwhelming, a source of stress. This mental friction isn't limited to work or chores. It affects habits and daily routines. If you try a new habit but don't complete it regularly, your brain keeps signaling the unfinished effort. This can feel like a nagging voice pushing you to get back on track, or a source of frustration if you ignore it. The brain creates this effect to encourage task completion because finishing jobs improves organization and reduces confusion. When tasks remain unfinished, your brain holds on to the information to remind you. This mechanism helped early humans stay safe by not forgetting important actions. Sometimes the Ziegarnik Effect can work against you. If you have too many unfinished tasks, the mental friction can build up and feel overwhelming. Instead of motivating, it can cause anxiety or distraction. This overload makes it harder to focus on any one task. To manage this, breaking tasks into smaller steps helps. Completing each step gives your brain a sense of closure and reduces mental friction. For instance, rather than tackling a large project all at once, finishing small parts provides frequent relief and keeps motivation high. Awareness of the effect also helps you plan better. Knowing that incomplete tasks linger in your mind, you can schedule regular times to review and finish them. This prevents the buildup of unfinished work and the mental friction that comes with it. The Ziegarnik Effect also shows why procrastination feels uncomfortable. When you avoid a task, your brain keeps reminding you about it. This mental reminder creates tension that pushes you to start working. Overcoming procrastination often means facing this mental friction head-on. In social situations, this effect explains why unresolved conflicts or unanswered questions keep bothering you. If a conversation ends without resolution, your mind holds on to it, seeking closure. This discomfort drives you to revisit the issue or find peace. Understanding the Ziegarnik Effect helps you see why some tasks pull your attention unexpectedly. It reveals how your mind uses unfinished business to guide your behavior. Rather than resisting these mental nudges, you can use them to improve focus and productivity. In daily life, Completing small tasks regularly reduces mental friction and supports better habits. It creates a smoother mental flow, freeing you to concentrate on new challenges. The satisfaction of finishing builds confidence and keeps you moving forward. The Ziegarnik Effect reminds you that your mind values closure. Unfinished tasks don't just disappear, they stick around until completed. This natural drive can be a powerful tool to motivate action and maintain focus when managed wisely. When you become an expert in something, you develop strong habits and ways of thinking that work well. This deep knowledge helps you perform efficiently, but it also creates a challenge called cognitive entrenchment. The more skilled you become, the harder it is to change your habits or try new methods. Your expertise makes you resistant to new habits, even when they might be better. Imagine a seasoned chef who has cooked the same recipes for years. They know exactly how to prepare dishes quickly and perfectly. But if you suggest a new cooking technique or a different ingredient, they might resist. Their established habits and mental patterns make it difficult to adapt. Changing means stepping out of a comfortable and reliable routine. Cognitive entrenchment happens because experts rely on mental shortcuts developed through experience. These shortcuts save time and effort by focusing on what has worked before. Over time, these ways of thinking become deeply embedded, making alternative approaches feel unfamiliar or risky. For example, a skilled driver might be so used to a particular route that they ignore signs suggesting a faster way. Their entrenched habit of driving the same way blocks them from trying new paths. The habit feels safe and proven, so changing it seems unnecessary. This resistance is not just about habits, but also about mindset. Experts often believe their approach is best, especially when it has delivered good results. New habits might challenge their confidence or require effort they don't want to invest. This makes change uncomfortable. In some cases, cognitive entrenchment can limit growth. Sticking to old habits means missing opportunities to improve or innovate. A programmer might avoid learning new coding languages because they're comfortable with what they know. This resistance slows progress in a fast-changing field. However, expertise and entrenchment also come with strengths. Deep knowledge gives stability and confidence in decision-making. The problem arises only when flexibility is needed. Being too entrenched reduces the ability to adapt to new situations or habits. Breaking free from cognitive entrenchment requires awareness. Experts need to recognize when their habits or thinking are too rigid. This self-awareness opens the door to curiosity and willingness to experiment. For example, the chef could try a new recipe on a small scale to see how it works without risking the whole kitchen. This gradual approach reduces fear of change and builds new habits alongside old ones. Learning new habits also helps by connecting them to existing knowledge. When you relate new ideas to what you already know, it feels less foreign. The programmer could start with small projects in a new language rather than diving in fully, easing the transition. Feedback and support matter too. Trusted peers or mentors can encourage experts to explore new habits by offering fresh perspectives. External input challenges entrenched views in a constructive way. In daily life, cognitive entrenchment explains why habits that once felt natural can become obstacles. You may notice reluctance to change routines even when you want to improve. Recognizing this resistance helps you approach change more patiently. Flexibility is a skill that experts must cultivate. Balancing confidence in existing habits with openness to new ones leads to better performance and growth. Cognitive entrenchment reminds us that expertise can be both a strength and a limitation. It shows the importance of balancing stability with adaptability. Your habits and thinking patterns build your expertise, but they shouldn't trap you. By staying curious and open, you keep learning and evolving, even as an expert. This balance creates lasting success and fresh opportunities. Sometimes people do things not because they truly want to, but because they feel guilty or pressured to do them. This is called introjected motivation. Instead of acting from their own desires, they act to avoid negative feelings like guilt, shame, or fear of judgment. This kind of motivation can shape habits, but it often leads to frustration and burnout. Imagine someone who exercises every day, not because they enjoy it, but because they feel guilty if they skip a workout. They might say, "I have to do this to stay healthy." But deep down, the real driver is avoiding the guilt of not exercising. Their motivation comes from pressure inside themselves, not from a genuine desire to move or feel good. This internal pressure can feel heavy. People with introjected motivation often push themselves hard, trying to meet standards they believe they must uphold. For example, a student might study long hours because they don't want to disappoint their parents or feel like a failure. The fear of negative feelings drives their behavior more than interest or curiosity about the subject. Introjected motivation can also affect work habits. An employee might stay late at the office because they feel they should impress their boss or avoid criticism. They may not enjoy the extra work, but the internal pressure keeps them going. This can lead to stress and exhaustion since the motivation doesn't come from personal satisfaction. One problem with introjected motivation is that it often doesn't last. When people act out of guilt or pressure, they may lose energy or enthusiasm over time. The habit feels like a burden rather than a choice. This can cause them to give up or feel resentful. For example, someone who diets because they feel guilty about their weight might follow strict rules for a while, but the constant pressure makes the habit hard to sustain. Eventually, they might abandon the diet and feel even worse, caught in a cycle of guilt and failure. Introjected motivation also affects how people talk to themselves. Instead of encouraging or supportive thoughts, they often experience harsh self-judgment, saying things like, "I should have done better," or "I'm lazy if I skip this," reinforces the pressure. This internal criticism fuels the motivation, but also harms confidence and well-being. Understanding introjected motivation helps explain why some habits feel so difficult. People might wonder why they can't stick with a routine, even when they know it's good for them. The answer is that the motivation is tied to negative feelings rather than positive reasons. Moving away from introjected motivation involves building more authentic motivation. This means finding personal meaning or enjoyment in the habit. For example, instead of exercising to avoid guilt, someone might focus on how movement makes them feel energized or relaxed. This shift creates a stronger and more positive reason to keep going. Self-compassion plays a role in this change. Being kind to yourself reduces harsh self-judgment and lowers pressure. When you treat yourself with understanding, you free your motivation from guilt and shame. This supports healthier and more lasting habits. Setting clear personal goals helps too. When goals come from your own values rather than external demands, motivation feels genuine. For example, choosing to learn a skill because it interests you leads to better focus and enjoyment than learning just to meet others' expectations. Introjected motivation can sometimes blend with other motivations, making it tricky to spot. People might start a habit with authentic reasons, but later feel pressured by internal or external demands. Being aware of this helps you check your true reasons for acting. Support from others can ease the shift away from introjected motivation. Encouragement and acceptance from friends or mentors reduce feelings of pressure and guilt. This creates a safer space to explore what truly motivates you in daily life. Noticing when you act out of guilt or pressure allows you to pause and reflect. Asking why you do something helps uncover introjected motivation. This awareness opens the door to choosing actions that feel more authentic and rewarding. Introjected motivation shows how emotions influence habits beyond simple choice. It reveals that not all motivation feels good or lasts long. By understanding this, you can build habits based on genuine desire and positive reasons, leading to more satisfaction and success. Sometimes you change as a person, but the way you see yourself doesn't keep up. This gap between who you are now and how you think about yourself is called identity lag. Because your self-concept hasn't caught up, your habits and behaviors may not reflect the changes you've made. This mismatch can cause confusion and slow your progress. Imagine someone who decides to live a healthier life. They start eating better, exercising, and sleeping more. Physically and mentally, they begin to feel different, but inside, they still think of themselves as someone who didn't care much about health. Their old self-image doesn't match their new actions. Because of this, they might slip back into old habits or feel unsure about the changes they've made. Identity lag happens because your self-concept is built over many years. It forms from your memories, beliefs, and experiences. When you make changes, your habits might shift quickly, but your mind takes longer to update the story you tell about yourself. This story influences how you behave every day. For example, a person who used to smoke for years may quit and feel physically healthier. Yet deep down, they might still see themselves as a smoker. This old identity can pull them back towards smoking, even if they don't want to. Their habits and self-view are out of sync, creating internal conflict. This lag can make it hard to keep new habits. If your self-image doesn't support the change, your brain struggles to maintain the new behavior. You might feel like you're pretending or forcing yourself, which can cause frustration and doubt. People often underestimate the power of identity in habit change. They focus on what to do, but not who they want to be. Without updating your self-concept, habits feel less meaningful. They become chores rather than natural parts of your life. For example, someone who wants to be more organized might buy planners and make lists. But if they don't see themselves as an organized person, they might stop using these tools. Their identity hasn't caught up with their intentions, so old habits return. Updating your self-concept takes time and attention. One way to do this is by telling yourself stories that reflect your new identity. Instead of saying, "I'm trying to exercise," say, "I am someone who moves every day." This simple shift helps your mind accept the change as part of who you are. Another method is to celebrate small wins that support your new identity. Each time you act in line with your goals, notice it and acknowledge it. For example, after a healthy meal or a workout, remind yourself, "This shows I'm becoming healthier." These moments reinforce your new self-image. Social feedback matters too. When others see you acting differently and treat you accordingly, it strengthens your updated identity. Sharing your goals and progress with supportive people helps align your self-concept with your new habits. Sometimes, identity lag causes self-doubt. You might think, "I'm not really that person yet," which can slow progress. Recognize this as part of the process. Changing who you are inside takes patience and consistent action. Setting identity-based goals, rather than just behavior-based goals, helps overcome lag. Instead of focusing only on exercise 3 times a week, focus on being an active person. This connects habits to your sense of self, making them easier to keep. Identity lag also explains why some habits relapse after strong starts. When you act against your old self-image, your brain resists. Without updating your internal story, the old habits feel more natural and pull you back. In everyday life, notice when your actions and self-view don't match. Ask yourself who you want to be and what stories you tell about yourself. Use your habits to support that identity and update your story as you grow. Identity lag shows that change is not just about what you do, but who you believe you are. When your self-concept catches up, your habits fall into place naturally. This alignment creates lasting transformation and a clearer sense of yourself. Sometimes, people miss important signals their body sends. These signals include hunger, tiredness, or boredom. When you don't notice or ignore these feelings, it's called interoceptive insensitivity. This lack of awareness can lead to habits that hurt your health or well-being because you don't respond properly to what your body needs. For example, imagine you're working at your desk and start feeling tired. Instead of recognizing the fatigue and taking a break, you push through without rest. Over time, this habit of ignoring tiredness can cause burnout or low energy. Your body tried to warn you, but you didn't listen. Ignoring hunger is another common case. Sometimes people eat when they aren't hungry because they don't recognize real hunger cues. They might eat out of boredom or stress instead. This can lead to overeating or unhealthy eating habits. On the flip side, some people don't notice hunger until they are very hungry, which can cause irregular eating patterns. Boredom is also a signal from the body and mind, asking for change or rest. If you don't notice boredom, you might keep doing the same thing or turn to distractions like scrolling on your phone. This can become a habit that avoids dealing with real needs, like creativity or social connection. Interoceptive insensitivity happens for many reasons. Sometimes people grow used to ignoring their body signals because life is busy or stressful. Other times, habits or cultural messages teach people to suppress their needs. For instance, a person may believe that feeling tired is a sign of weakness and try to ignore it. This insensitivity makes it harder to maintain healthy habits. When you don't respond to your body's signals, you may eat at odd times, skip rest, or push through pain. Over time, these habits can cause physical or emotional problems like fatigue, weight gain, or stress. For example, an athlete who doesn't notice early signs of fatigue may train too hard, risking injury. A worker who ignores hunger might experience low blood sugar, leading to poor focus or irritability. These issues show how important tuning into body signals is. Improving awareness of these signals can help build better habits. Paying attention to feelings like hunger or tiredness and responding to them supports health. For example, noticing when you feel slightly hungry and eating a balanced snack prevents overeating later. Mindfulness practices help increase interoceptive awareness. Simple exercises like checking in with your body throughout the day can make you more sensitive to its messages. Asking yourself how you feel physically and emotionally helps tune into signals that often go unnoticed. Creating routines that respect your body's needs also supports better habits. Setting regular meal times, scheduling breaks, and allowing time for rest encourages awareness. When your routine honors your body's signals, unhealthy habits are less likely to take hold. Sometimes, external distractions interfere with body awareness. Constant noise, screens, or multitasking can pull your attention away from internal signals. Reducing these distractions allows you to focus more on how your body feels. Understanding interoceptive insensitivity helps explain why some habits feel automatic or out of control. You might not realize that ignoring body signals leads to poor choices. Increasing your sensitivity gives you more control and helps you make decisions that fit your true needs. In relationships, being aware of body signals can improve communication and connection. When you know your feelings and needs better, you can express them clearly. This reduces misunderstandings and supports healthier interactions. In daily life, noticing small signals like a growling stomach or heavy eyelids gives you clues about what your body needs. Responding kindly to these messages helps you avoid harmful habits and supports overall well-being. Interoceptive insensitivity shows that your body talks to you constantly. When you learn to listen, you can guide your habits toward what truly supports you. This awareness is a powerful step in building a healthier, more balanced life. Your brain constantly evaluates how your actions affect your place within your social group. This process is called tribal cost-benefit simulation. It's an unconscious calculation of the risks and rewards of behavior in terms of social standing, acceptance, and belonging. Understanding this helps explain why people act the way they do around others and how social habits form. Imagine you are at a meeting with coworkers. you want to share an idea, but you hesitate because you worry about how others will react. Your brain runs a quick cost-benefit simulation. Will speaking up improve your reputation or risk embarrassment? This mental calculation weighs the benefits of being seen as confident against the cost of possible rejection. This simulation is deeply rooted in human nature. For thousands of years, being part of a tribe or group meant safety and survival. Losing social standing could mean exclusion and danger. Because of this, the brain is wired to monitor social signals and predict outcomes before acting. For example, a teenager might dress a certain way or speak with slang because they want to fit in with peers. Their brain evaluates whether adopting these habits increases social acceptance. If they believe the cost of standing out is too high, they adjust behavior to match the group, even if it conflicts with personal preference. Tribal cost-benefit simulation affects more than just big decisions. It influences everyday habits like manners, tone of voice, and body language. When you notice someone frowning or turning away, your brain interprets this as a social cost. You might smile more or change your topic to reduce that cost and maintain good standing. This process also explains why social pressure is powerful. People often follow group habits, even unhealthy ones, because the cost of rejection feels greater than the personal cost of the habit. For instance, someone might start smoking or drinking to avoid feeling left out, despite knowing the health risks. The simulation works by predicting possible social rewards too. Compliments, praise, and inclusion are positive outcomes your brain seeks. These rewards motivate behaviors that align with group values. For example, volunteering to help in a community might boost your reputation and make you feel valued. Sometimes the simulation causes hesitation or anxiety. When social costs seem high or uncertain, people freeze or avoid action. Public speaking fears or difficulty saying no to others often come from this mental calculation. Your brain tries to protect you from negative social outcomes. Understanding tribal cost-benefit simulation can help you navigate social habits more consciously. Recognizing when fear of judgment drives your actions allows you to question whether the social cost is real or imagined. You might realize that acting authentically could have a lower cost than you thought. Balancing social costs and benefits also means knowing when to prioritize your values over acceptance. For example, choosing not to join in a harmful habit, even if it risks exclusion, shows awareness of your long-term well-being. This balance takes practice and confidence. Social groups themselves play a role in shaping these calculations. Different groups have different norms and expectations. Your brain adapts the simulation based on which tribe you want to belong to. Moving between social circles can change your behavior as you weigh different costs and benefits. Tribal cost-benefit simulation isn't always conscious. Often, you act before realizing the social calculations behind your behavior. This automatic process helps you fit in smoothly, but can also limit your freedom to choose. Being aware of this simulation lets you understand why some habits feel automatic or hard to change. Your brain may resist actions that threaten your social standing, even if you want to change personally. In daily life, this means paying attention to moments when you hesitate or change your behavior around others. Ask yourself what social costs or benefits you're weighing. This insight helps you make clearer choices about when to conform and when to stand out. Your brain's tribal cost-benefit simulation is a powerful force behind social habits. It reflects the deep human need to belong and be valued. By understanding this process, you can better manage your social behavior and build habits that support both your relationships and your true self. When you overthink a habit, it can actually get worse instead of better. This idea is called Reinvestment Theory. The more you focus on the details of a habit you've learned well, the more likely you are to disrupt it. Instead of helping, conscious thinking interferes with smooth, automatic action. Think about riding a bike. Once you learn, You don't need to think about balancing or pedaling. Your body just does it. But if you suddenly start analyzing every movement, how much pressure to put on the pedals or where to place your feet, you may wobble or lose balance. Your smooth habit breaks down because you're paying too much attention to something that used to happen naturally. Reinvestment theory explains this by showing how habits move from conscious control to automatic execution. At first, you must think carefully to learn a new skill. Over time, your brain shifts control to automatic processes. When you reinvest conscious attention into a well-learned habit, you disrupt these automatic processes. For example, a musician who has practiced a song many times usually plays it smoothly without much thought. But during a performance, if they start worrying about every note or finger position, their playing might falter. The habit of playing becomes less reliable because conscious thinking interferes with the flow. This theory applies to many habits, including sports, speaking, and daily routines. A golfer might miss an easy putt after overthinking their swing. A public speaker may stumble over words when focusing too hard on each sentence. Even habits like typing or driving can be affected by too much conscious control. Reinvestment happens most often under pressure or stress. When you feel nervous or self-conscious, your brain tries to regain control by focusing closely on the habit. But this heightened attention usually makes performance worse, creating a cycle of doubt and mistakes. For instance, an athlete in a competition might suddenly overanalyze their movements because of the high stakes. Instead of trusting their training, they consciously micromanage each step, leading to poorer results. This shows how reinvestment can turn automatic skills into a source of anxiety. Understanding reinvestment theory helps explain why sometimes less thinking leads to better performance. When habits are well practiced, letting your body and mind work automatically usually produces the best outcome. Trusting your training and experience prevents overthinking from disrupting your flow. One way to manage reinvestment is to practice mindfulness and stay present. Instead of focusing on the mechanics of a habit, pay attention to the overall experience. For example, a runner might focus on breathing or the rhythm of their steps rather than each footfall. This helps maintain automatic control. Another approach is mental rehearsal before performing. Visualizing the habit going smoothly trains your brain to rely on automatic processes. This can reduce the tendency to overthink when it's time to act. Reinvestment theory also suggests the importance of practice in different conditions. By practicing a habit in various environments and situations, you build stronger automatic control. This makes the habit less vulnerable to disruption from conscious thought. Sometimes, taking a break from consciously trying to improve a habit can help. Over-practicing with too much focus can increase reinvestment. Rest allows your brain to solidify automatic processes without interference. Reinvestment theory explains why coaching advice can sometimes backfire. If a coach tells you to pay close attention to a well-learned habit during performance, it might cause reinvestment and reduce effectiveness. The best advice often encourages trusting your instincts and letting the habit flow naturally. In everyday life, this means you don't always need to analyze your habits to improve them. For habits you've mastered, less thinking and more trust in your automatic skills usually works better. Overthinking can cause hesitation, errors, or loss of confidence. Reinvestment theory highlights a delicate balance between learning and performing habits. Early on, conscious effort is necessary, but eventually, habits need to run on autopilot. Learning to step back and let automatic processes take over supports smoother, more reliable behavior. Your brain is designed to automate habits for efficiency. When you interfere by thinking too much, you disrupt this natural system. Recognizing reinvestment helps you know when to focus and when to trust your training, leading to better habits and performance. Sometimes people tie their habits to roles or stories they believe they must live out. This is called archetypal overcoupling. It happens when you link your actions to a mythic or larger-than-life identity, like the hustler, the caregiver, or the rebel. Instead of habits serving your goals, they become bound to these roles, which can limit flexibility and create pressure. Imagine someone who sees themselves as the hustler. They believe they must always work hard, push through fatigue, and never stop. Their habit of working long hours isn't just about productivity. It's part of the story they tell about who they are. This identity makes it hard to rest or slow down because doing so feels like betraying the role. This binding between habits and archetypes can shape behavior deeply. When habits align with a powerful role, they gain meaning and strength. But they can also trap you in patterns that don't fit changing needs or situations. For example, the caregiver might always put others first, working tirelessly to help family and friends. While generous, this role can lead to neglecting personal health or goals. Archetypal overcoupling limits choice. You might want to try new habits, but they clash with the role you play. A rebel who avoids rules might resist habits like scheduling or planning. Even if these habits would help them, the role creates a boundary that keeps certain habits locked in or out. This effect happens because archetypes come from deep cultural stories and personal beliefs. They provide a framework for identity and behavior. When you attach a habit to an archetype, it feels right and necessary. Changing the habit can feel like changing who you are, which is difficult and threatening. For example, someone who sees themselves as the perfectionist might develop habits of overworking and double-checking everything. These habits support their identity, but can lead to stress and burnout. Trying to relax or accept mistakes may feel impossible because it breaks the archetypal story. Archetypal overcoupling also affects motivation. When a habit fits the role, motivation is strong because the habit supports your sense of self. But if a habit feels outside the role, motivation drops. You might resist or sabotage change because it threatens the identity you've built. This coupling can create conflict inside. You might feel torn between what you want and what the archetype demands. For example, the provider might want to slow down and enjoy life more, but feel guilty because their role says they must always work to support others. Breaking free from archetypal overcoupling involves separating habits from fixed roles. This means recognizing that habits serve you, not the other way around. You can choose habits based on current needs and values, not just identity stories. Reflecting on the roles you play helps. Ask yourself which habits come from your own goals and which come from trying to live up to an archetype. This awareness opens the door to change. Experimenting with new habits that don't fit your archetype challenges the old story. For example, a hustler might practice rest without guilt. A rebel might try planning to see how it feels. These experiments build a more flexible sense of self. Support from others who see you beyond your role helps too. Friends or coaches who encourage growth without labels create space to change habits freely. Understanding archetypal overcoupling explains why some habits feel tied to identity and hard to change. It shows how deep stories shape behavior and motivation. In daily life, this means paying attention to the stories you tell about yourself and how they affect your habits. When you notice a habit feels like a role requirement, consider if it still serves you or if it's time to rewrite the story. Archetypal overcoupling reveals the power and limits of identity in shaping habits. By loosening these bonds, you gain freedom to build habits that fit your true needs and evolve as you grow. People often believe they know how a habit will make them feel, but they usually get it wrong. This mistake is called affective forecasting error. It means you're bad at predicting the emotional impact of your actions, especially habits. This error influences why some habits are hard to start or keep, while others don't bring the satisfaction you expected. Imagine you decide to start running every morning because you think it will make you feel energized and happy all day. At first, the runs might feel exhausting and unpleasant. You might wonder why you expected something different. This gap between your prediction and actual feeling is a clear example of affective forecasting error. This error happens because feelings are complex and influenced by many factors you don't always consider. You might focus on the long-term benefits of a habit, like better health, and assume you'll feel good immediately. But in reality, the habit might involve discomfort or effort that changes how you feel in the moment. For example, a person who decides to eat healthier may expect to feel proud and satisfied, but early on, they might feel deprived or frustrated because they miss their old foods. Their emotional prediction didn't account for the challenge of change, leading to surprise or disappointment. Affective forecasting error also affects motivation. If you expect a habit to bring strong, positive feelings, you might be more willing to start it. But when the habit doesn't match those feelings, motivation drops. This mismatch is why many people quit habits shortly after starting. On the flip side, you might underestimate the positive feelings a habit can bring. Someone might avoid meditation thinking it will be boring or frustrating. But when they try it, they discover a sense of calm and focus they didn't predict. In this case, affective forecasting error leads to missed opportunities. Social habits are affected too. You might expect a new group activity to feel awkward or stressful, so you avoid it. But when you join, you find it enjoyable and rewarding. Your mind's forecast didn't match the actual experience. One reason affective forecasting error occurs is that you base predictions on memories and imagination, both of which can be inaccurate. You might remember past experiences selectively or imagine situations without all details. This leads to overestimating or underestimating how habits will feel. Another factor is that emotions change over time. A habit that feels hard or unpleasant at first may become enjoyable as you adjust. For instance, learning to cook healthy meals might seem difficult at the start, but can turn into a fun and creative activity. Your initial forecast often misses this shift. Being aware of affective forecasting error helps you manage expectations. Recognize that your feelings about a habit might change as you practice it. This awareness reduces frustration and supports persistence. Setting small, realistic goals can also help. Instead of expecting big emotional rewards immediately, focus on gradual progress. Celebrate small wins to build positive feelings over time. You can also test your forecasts by trying habits briefly before committing. Sampling a habit gives real experience, helping correct mistaken predictions. For example, try a short workout or a single healthy meal before deciding to change your routine fully. Talking with others who practice the habit can provide insights too. They can share how their feelings evolved, offering a more realistic picture than your own imagination. In daily life, affective forecasting error shows why your motivation can be unpredictable. It explains why habits sometimes feel harder or easier than expected. Knowing this, you can approach habits with patience and curiosity rather than frustration. Your brain is not perfect at predicting feelings, but you can learn to adjust. By recognizing affective forecasting error, you give yourself space to explore habits without harsh judgment. This leads to better choices and stronger, more enjoyable habits over time. Sometimes your mind drifts away from what's happening around you. It disconnects from the sights, sounds, and feelings in the moment. This is called perceptual decoupling. When this happens, you focus inward on thoughts, worries, or memories instead of sensory input. This shift can increase habits based on rumination, repeating thoughts that keep you stuck. Imagine sitting in a meeting but not really hearing what's being said. Your mind wanders to worries about a past argument or plans for later. You're physically present but mentally distant. This is perceptual decoupling. Your attention moves away from the present experience toward internal thoughts. Perceptual decoupling can happen to everyone, but it's common when people feel stressed, anxious, or bored. When the external world doesn't grab your attention, your brain looks inward. This inward focus can lead to repetitive thinking, often about problems or regrets. These rumination-based habits may include overthinking, worrying, or replaying events. For example, someone waiting in a long line might start mentally going over mistakes they made earlier in the day. Their mind decouples from the surroundings and gets caught in a loop of negative thoughts. This habit of rumination can make the wait feel longer and increase feelings of stress. This mental state affects habits because it pulls you away from the here and now. When you're disconnected from sensory input, you might turn to behaviors that feed rumination. These could be checking your phone repeatedly, pacing, or even unhealthy coping mechanisms like smoking or overeating. These habits provide a way to manage discomfort caused by rumination. Perceptual decoupling also reduces your ability to respond effectively to the environment. If your mind is elsewhere, you might miss important cues or opportunities. For instance, if you're driving but lost in thought, your reaction time slows, increasing risk. Similarly, in social situations, perceptual decoupling can make you seem distant or distracted, affecting relationships. The brain sometimes uses perceptual decoupling as a defense. When reality feels overwhelming or boring, turning inward provides temporary escape. This can be helpful in small doses, but becomes harmful if it leads to persistent rumination and habits that avoid real issues. Breaking the cycle of perceptual decoupling involves grounding yourself in the present. Mindfulness practices help by training your attention back to sensory input. Noticing sounds, smells, or physical sensations brings your mind back to the moment and reduces rumination. For example, when you notice your mind drifting, try focusing on your breath or the feeling of your feet on the ground. This simple act reconnects you with your body and surroundings, breaking the loop of inward focus. Creating environments that engage your senses can also reduce perceptual decoupling. Being outdoors, listening to music, or doing hands-on activities pulls your attention outward. These experiences lower the chance your mind will slip into rumination. When habits of rumination appear, try to interrupt them with action. Taking a short walk, calling a friend, or practicing a hobby shifts your focus away from repetitive thoughts. These actions create new patterns that replace unhelpful habits linked to perceptual decoupling. Understanding perceptual decoupling helps explain why some habits feel automatic and hard to break. Your mind is partly disconnected from the world, making it easier to fall into loops of thought and behavior that don't serve you. In daily life, becoming aware of when your mind drifts helps you regain control. Notice moments when you feel distant or distracted, and gently bring your attention back. This awareness supports healthier habits and clearer thinking. Perceptual decoupling shows how your mind balances internal and external focus. When the balance tips inward too much, rumination and related habits grow stronger. Learning to reconnect with sensory input helps you break free from these patterns. Your mind can wander, but you don't have to stay lost. By practicing presence and engagement with the world around you, you reduce rumination and create space for healthier, more mindful habits. Sometimes, parts of yourself that you don't accept or recognize still influence your behavior. These hidden aspects are called your shadow. When you fail to integrate this shadow into your conscious self, it can show up through compulsive behaviors. This is known as shadow integration failure. Imagine someone who sees themselves as calm and in control. They avoid feeling anger or frustration because these emotions don't fit their self-image. However, these feelings don't disappear. Instead, they emerge in other ways. The person might bite their nails, overeat, or constantly check their phone. These compulsive behaviors act as outlets for the disowned emotions. Shadow integration failure happens because the mind tries to keep unwanted feelings or traits out of awareness. It's uncomfortable to face parts of yourself you don't like or have been taught to reject, but those parts don't vanish. Instead, they influence your habits and reactions in hidden ways. For example, someone who denies their need for attention might behave in ways that secretly seek it. They may interrupt others or exaggerate stories without realizing the true motive. The shadow part, needing attention, remains unacknowledged but drives behavior. Compulsive habits like smoking, gambling, or excessive work can also be signs of shadow integration failure. These actions often provide a temporary escape from uncomfortable feelings that the person has pushed away. The habit masks the deeper issue but doesn't solve it. Ignoring your shadow creates internal conflict. You try to act one way, but hidden parts push you to act another. This tension can cause stress, guilt, or confusion. For instance, a person might feel proud of their discipline, but struggle with secret urges that lead to binge eating or procrastination. Recognizing shadow parts is the first step toward integration. It means accepting that you have emotions, desires, or traits that may seem negative, but are part of your whole self. Instead of fighting these parts, you bring them into awareness and understand their role. For example, if you notice a compulsive habit, ask what feelings or needs it might be covering up. Is it boredom, loneliness, or anger? Naming these emotions reduces their power and helps you respond in healthier ways. Shadow integration requires patience and honesty. It's not about blaming yourself for unwanted feelings or behaviors, but about accepting them as part of your human experience. This acceptance opens the door to change and growth. Therapy or self-reflection practices can support this process. Talking with a professional or journaling about hidden emotions helps uncover shadow parts. Exploring your inner world with curiosity makes it easier to integrate these aspects. Once integrated, the energy behind compulsive behaviors often decreases. When you acknowledge and accept your shadow, you don't need to act it out through habits. This leads to more freedom and balance in your actions. For example, someone who accepts their anger may express it constructively instead of holding it inside and turning to self-destructive habits. Recognizing that anger is a natural feeling helps release the need for unhealthy outlets. Shadow integration also improves relationships. When you understand your hidden parts, you communicate more honestly and relate to others with empathy. This reduces conflicts caused by unconscious behavior. In everyday life, shadow integration means paying attention to habits that feel out of control or confusing. Instead of judging yourself, try to explore what these behaviors might be telling you about your hidden feelings. Shadow integration failure explains why some habits persist despite efforts to change. The root cause isn't just the habit itself, but the disowned parts driving it. By bringing these parts into light, you weaken the habit's hold. Your shadow is not something to fear or reject. It is a part of you, waiting to be understood. Embracing this part leads to stronger self-awareness and healthier habits. It creates space for growth and deeper peace within yourself. Sometimes, a habit becomes tied to strong emotions, and this connection makes the habit fragile. This is called ritual contamination. When you pair a habit with something emotionally charged, whether positive or negative, it can affect how easily the habit sticks or breaks. The emotional weight changes the habit's stability and your ability to perform it consistently. Imagine someone who starts jogging every morning to feel healthier. At first, the habit feels positive and freeing. But then, after a difficult breakup, the person associates jogging with sadness and loneliness. Suddenly, the habit triggers these heavy emotions, making it harder to keep going. The habit is contaminated by the emotional experience connected to it. Ritual contamination happens because your brain links emotions with behaviors, creating strong associations. When a habit is tied to intense feelings, those feelings influence your motivation and ability to perform the habit. If the emotions are negative or overwhelming, they can cause the habit to break down easily. For example, a person might associate drinking coffee with stressful mornings. Even if coffee was once a pleasant ritual, now it reminds them of anxiety or pressure. This emotional link can make the habit feel unpleasant, causing them to avoid it or change their routine. Positive emotions can also contaminate a habit, though in a different way. If you link a habit to a specific joyful event, you might find it hard to do the habit when that feeling fades. For instance, if someone starts yoga after a happy life event, they might lose motivation when life feels less joyful. The habit depends too much on the original emotion. This connection between emotion and habit makes rituals vulnerable. Strong feelings make the habit sensitive to mood changes or external events. If your emotional state shifts, the habit can break or feel forced. Ritual contamination can explain why some habits feel unpredictable. You might stick to a routine for weeks, then suddenly quit because of an emotional trigger. The habit's fragility comes from the emotional baggage tied to it, not the habit itself. Understanding this helps you separate your habits from heavy emotions. One way is to build habits in neutral or stable emotional states, avoiding moments of high stress or excitement. Starting a habit when you feel calm creates a cleaner connection, less vulnerable to emotional shifts. Another way to reduce contamination is to create multiple cues or reasons for a habit. Instead of tying a habit to one emotional event, connect it to daily routines or practical benefits. For example, instead of jogging just to feel better after a breakup, focus on its health benefits, time outside, or social interaction. If a habit is already contaminated, acknowledging the emotional connection helps. Reflect on how feelings affect your motivation and look for ways to adjust. You might try new contexts for the habit or add supportive activities that balance the emotional load. Support from others can also help manage ritual contamination. Talking about your feelings and habits reduces emotional pressure and creates a healthier environment for change. Encouragement from friends or coaches can keep a habit going even when emotions fluctuate. In daily life, noticing when emotions strongly affect your habits gives you clues about contamination. If a habit feels fragile or linked to mood swings, consider whether emotional weight is involved. Awareness helps you address the root cause and build stronger habits. Ritual contamination reminds you that habits aren't just mechanical actions. They're connected to your feelings and experiences. This connection can both help and hurt. When habits carry heavy emotions, they need careful handling to last. By separating habits from intense emotions or broadening the reasons behind them, you create more resilience. Your habits become less fragile and more adaptable to life's ups and downs. Emotions shape your behavior deeply, but habits can survive and thrive beyond them. Understanding ritual contamination helps you build habits that stand firm, even when feelings shift. This balance supports lasting change and steady progress. When your mind is full of thoughts, worries, and tasks, it feels cluttered. This mental clutter increases what we call cognitive load. High cognitive load makes it hard to focus on new decisions, so your brain falls back on autopilot habits. This creates a loop. Mental clutter pushes you into habits, and habits become automatic responses to overload. Imagine you have a busy day with many things to remember, emails to answer, meetings to attend, errands to run. Your brain juggles all these tasks, and soon it feels overwhelmed. In this state, you might skip making new choices and rely on familiar routines, like grabbing fast food instead of cooking, or scrolling on your phone instead of working. This happens because your brain wants to save energy. Making new decisions takes effort, especially when your mind is crowded. Habits don't require much thinking. They run automatically. So when cognitive load is high, habits offer an easy way to keep moving without adding mental strain. For example, after a stressful day, you might come home and immediately reach for a snack you always eat while watching TV. You don't think about it, you just do it. Your brain falls into the habit loop because it's tired of managing complicated decisions. Cognitive load loops can also trap you in unhelpful habits. If you rely on autopilot behaviors when overwhelmed, you might repeatedly choose actions that don't serve your goals. For instance, procrastinating by checking social media can add to stress instead of relieving it. But because your brain is overloaded, it takes the easy route. These loops work both ways. High cognitive load increases habit use, and some habits can increase mental clutter. Constantly multitasking or switching tasks can fill your mind with unfinished thoughts. This creates a cycle where your brain struggles to focus, and habits become the default. Understanding cognitive load loops helps explain why changing habits can be difficult when life feels busy. It's not just a matter of willpower. Your brain is overloaded, so it defaults to what feels easiest. Breaking this cycle starts with managing mental clutter. Simplifying your tasks, prioritizing what matters, and taking breaks can reduce cognitive load. For example, planning your day with clear priorities helps your brain focus on fewer things, freeing space for thoughtful choices. Another strategy is creating positive habits that require little effort but support your goals. If healthy eating is your aim, keep simple meals ready so you don't have to decide under pressure. Making good habits easier helps you rely on them when cognitive load is high. Mindfulness also helps by training your brain to notice when you're on autopilot. Being aware of when mental clutter pushes you into habits gives you a chance to pause and choose differently. For instance, before grabbing that usual snack, check in and ask if you're truly hungry or just overwhelmed. Technology can both increase and reduce cognitive load. Notifications and constant information streams add clutter, but apps that organize tasks can help simplify. Using tools wisely helps you control mental clutter rather than letting it control you. Cognitive load loops also explain why habits feel automatic but hard to change. Your brain is protecting itself from overload by sticking to routines. When you feel mentally crowded, expecting instant change is unrealistic. In daily life, noticing when your mind feels full helps you slow down and clear space. Small steps like deep breathing or short walks reduce mental clutter and break the loop. These moments of calm restore your ability to make conscious choices. Cognitive load loops reveal how mental clutter shapes behavior deeply. They show that habits are not just simple patterns, but survival tools for your brain. By managing cognitive load, you open the door to better habits and clearer thinking. Your brain prefers habits when overloaded, but it can also learn new ways to handle stress and clutter. Understanding this cycle gives you control, helping you build habits that support you even on busy days. Sometimes, people avoid thinking about their own thoughts. This is called metacognitive avoidance. Instead of facing what's going on in their mind, they steer clear of reflection or self-examination. This avoidance allows old habits and patterns to run automatically without conscious control. Imagine you catch yourself getting angry in certain situations, but you avoid thinking about why you feel that way. You might distract yourself or push the feelings aside. Because you don't explore these thoughts, the anger continues to influence your reactions without change. The habit of reacting angrily stays in place because you never address the root cause. Metacognitive avoidance happens because thinking about your own thoughts can feel uncomfortable or overwhelming. You might fear judgment, guilt, or confusion. To protect yourself from these feelings, your mind shuts down deeper reflection. This defense lets old habits operate freely, even if they no longer serve you. For example, someone who frequently procrastinates may avoid thinking about the reasons behind their delay. Instead of asking why they feel stuck, they focus on busy work or distractions. Without understanding the mental patterns causing procrastination, the behavior repeats. This avoidance can keep negative cycles going. If you don't examine your thoughts, you miss the chance to see unhealthy beliefs or automatic reactions. These hidden mental scripts guide behavior silently, making change difficult. At work, metacognitive avoidance might look like ignoring feelings of stress or frustration. You carry on with your tasks, but don't explore what's causing discomfort. The unresolved feelings affect your focus and motivation, yet you don't address them because you avoid thinking about them. In relationships, This avoidance can cause misunderstandings. If you don't reflect on your thoughts or feelings, you might react based on old patterns rather than thoughtful responses. For instance, avoiding thinking about jealousy might lead to repeated arguments without resolution. Breaking free from metacognitive avoidance requires courage and curiosity. It means learning to sit with your thoughts, even when they are uncomfortable. This practice helps you recognize patterns and understand why you act the way you do. Journaling or talking with a trusted person can support this process. Writing down your thoughts or discussing them out loud creates space to explore your mind gently. This reflection reduces avoidance and builds insight. Mindfulness also helps by encouraging non-judgmental awareness of your thoughts. Instead of pushing thoughts away, you notice them and let them pass without reacting. This practice weakens avoidance and strengthens conscious control over habits. When you start facing your thoughts, you gain power to change behaviors. Understanding the mental stories behind your actions allows you to choose new responses. For example, realizing that procrastination stems from fear rather than laziness helps you address that fear and build better habits. Metacognitive avoidance explains why some habits feel automatic and unchangeable. The habits run on old mental loops because you avoid examining the thoughts driving them. Bringing these thoughts into awareness disrupts the cycle. In daily life, paying attention to moments when you avoid thinking about your feelings or thoughts creates opportunities for growth. Asking yourself what you might be avoiding opens the door to understanding. This awareness reduces the power of old habits and creates space for new ways of acting. You don't have to be controlled by hidden mental patterns. Facing your thoughts builds freedom. Metacognitive avoidance is a natural response to difficult emotions, but it can hold you back. Learning to embrace your inner world helps you live more consciously and build healthier habits. Your mind may want to avoid uncomfortable thoughts, but you can gently invite curiosity instead. This shift changes how habits run your life, allowing you to steer your behavior with awareness and calm confidence. When you achieve small successes, you might expect to feel confident and motivated. But sometimes, those wins bring a strange mix of pleasure and insecurity. This is called Pleasure-Insecurity Oscillation. You enjoy the progress, but also worry about being found out as a fraud or losing the momentum you've built. This back-and-forth feeling can affect how you continue your habits. Imagine someone who starts exercising regularly and notices they feel stronger and healthier. They feel proud, but also anxious. They might think, what if people realize I'm not really committed? Or what if I slip up and lose everything I've gained? This mix of excitement and doubt creates an internal push and pull. Pleasure-insecurity oscillation happens because success can trigger self-doubt. When you make progress, you raise expectations from yourself and others. This can feel threatening, especially if you've struggled with the habit before. Your mind worries about maintaining the success or being exposed as less capable than you seem. For example, a person who quits smoking and stays smoke-free for a few weeks might start feeling anxious. The initial pleasure of quitting clashes with fear that the habit will return. They might second-guess their efforts or feel tense about social situations where smoking happens. This insecurity can lead to hesitation or even relapse. This oscillation can also happen in work or learning. If you complete a project successfully, you might enjoy the accomplishment, but fear the next task will be harder or that you can't keep up. These doubts can slow your progress or make you avoid challenges. The cycle between pleasure and insecurity creates emotional tension. On one hand, the pleasure motivates you to continue. On the other, insecurity saps your confidence and energy. This tension can make habits feel unstable and cause ups and downs in motivation. Understanding this pattern helps explain why small wins sometimes don't feel entirely positive. The pleasure of progress is real, but the insecurity can cloud your feelings and decisions. Recognizing this allows you to accept both sides without letting fear take control. One way to manage pleasure-insecurity oscillation is to build self-compassion. When insecurity arises, treat yourself kindly instead of criticizing or doubting your efforts. Remind yourself that setbacks or doubts are normal parts of change. Another approach is to focus on effort rather than outcome. Celebrate the fact that you are trying and learning, not just the success itself. This mindset reduces pressure and makes progress feel less fragile. Talking about your feelings with trusted friends or mentors can also help. Sharing your doubts brings perspective and support. Others can remind you of your strengths and encourage persistence through insecurity. Setting realistic goals is important too. When expectations are too high, insecurity grows. Breaking goals into manageable steps creates steady progress and reduces fear of failure. In daily life, notice when you feel this mix of pleasure and insecurity. Don't rush to dismiss the insecurity as weakness. Instead, observe it calmly and let it pass without making hasty decisions. This awareness helps you stay balanced. Pleasure-insecurity oscillation shows how emotions around success are complex. Progress is rarely simple joy. It often includes fear and doubt. Accepting this complexity makes it easier to keep moving forward. Your brain reacts to success with both reward and caution. This dual response protects you from overconfidence, but can also hold you back. Learning to navigate this emotional dance gives you greater control over your habits. In short, small wins can bring joy and anxiety at the same time. Recognizing and managing this oscillation helps you maintain motivation and build lasting change. It turns conflicting feelings into a balanced path toward growth. Sometimes your habits don't just involve the behavior you want to change. They involve how you manage those behaviors. This is called recursive habit loops. It means you build habits around tracking, monitoring, or controlling your original habits. For example, you might start measuring your steps daily or logging every meal to stay on track. Over time, these management habits become a habit themselves, sometimes even stronger than the original one. Imagine someone who wants to improve their fitness. At first, they focus on exercising regularly. But soon, they create a new habit of checking a fitness app every hour to see how many steps they've taken. Tracking becomes a habit on its own. This recursive loop can help because it keeps the original habit visible and motivates action. However, it can also turn into a distraction or obsession. Recursive habit loops often start as a way to stay accountable. You might set reminders, use journals, or track progress with apps. These tools become part of your daily routine. Instead of just exercising or eating well, you spend time managing how well you do those things. The act of tracking or organizing turns into a habit itself. For example, a person trying to eat healthier might start writing down everything they eat. Over time, logging food becomes a daily ritual. Sometimes, the focus shifts from eating well to perfecting the log. The original habit, healthy eating, can get lost in the process of managing the habit. This loop can be helpful because it keeps you engaged and aware. Seeing your progress in numbers or charts can motivate you to keep going. But recursive loops can also create pressure. When managing the habit becomes the goal, you might feel stressed about tracking perfectly, which leads to anxiety or burnout. Some people develop recursive loops around negative habits too. Someone trying to quit smoking might check their cravings constantly or count how many times they resist. The habit of managing cravings can become a source of stress rather than relief. The challenge with recursive habit loops is balance. Too little management, and habits may slip away unnoticed. Too much management, and you risk losing sight of why you started. Your attention shifts from living the habit to managing it, which can feel tiring or frustrating. Understanding recursive habit loops helps you see why some habits feel complicated. It's not just about the action itself, but also about how you relate to it. Sometimes you're managing the habit more than practicing it. To keep this loop healthy, set limits on management habits. For example, decide to check your step count only once a day instead of every hour. This reduces the chance of the management habit becoming overwhelming. Also, focus on the purpose behind your management. Ask yourself if tracking or monitoring is helping your original goal or just creating more work. This helps you keep management tools as support, not the main event. Switching between managing and doing helps too. Spend time fully engaged in the habit, like exercising or cooking healthy meals, without distraction. Then, use management habits briefly to check progress. This balance keeps both habits working well. Sometimes, recursive loops reveal deeper needs. Maybe tracking feels necessary because you want control or reassurance. Exploring these feelings can help you find healthier ways to support your habits. In daily life, notice when managing a habit starts to feel like the habit itself. This awareness helps you adjust your focus back to the original behavior. It frees you from getting stuck in endless loops of self-monitoring. Recursive habit loops show how habits build on each other. Your brain creates layers of behavior to support change. By understanding this, you can guide your habits wisely, keeping management helpful and habits effective. Your relationship with habits matters as much as the habits themselves. Learning to balance action and management creates a smoother, more sustainable path to change. The way you learn to relate to others early in life shapes how you handle emotions now. This is called attachment style residue. Even as an adult, your habits for managing feelings often echo the patterns formed in childhood relationships. These early patterns influence how you cope with stress, seek comfort, and respond to challenges. For example, if you grew up with caregivers who were consistent and responsive, you likely developed a secure attachment style. This background helps you trust others and regulate emotions well. You might have habits like talking openly about your feelings or seeking support when stressed. These habits come naturally because your early experiences taught you it's safe to rely on others. On the other hand, if your caregivers were unpredictable or distant, you might have developed anxious or avoidant attachment styles. These patterns leave traces in your emotional habits. Someone with an anxious style might cope with stress by constantly seeking reassurance or worrying excessively. They may habitually overthink or ruminate on problems, trying to control uncertain situations. In contrast, someone with an avoidant style might habitually suppress emotions or avoid closeness. They may distract themselves with work or hobbies rather than facing difficult feelings. These habits protect them from vulnerability, but can also isolate them and increase stress over time. Attachment style residue shows how powerful early relationships are. They create mental models, internal maps, of how emotions and support work. Your brain uses these models as a guide for current emotional habits, often without you realizing it. For instance, imagine someone who finds it hard to ask for help when overwhelmed. This habit might come from early experiences where showing need was met with rejection or neglect. Their brain learned to handle emotions alone, so they keep that pattern even if circumstances have changed. Understanding your attachment style residue helps explain why some emotional habits feel automatic or hard to change. You might struggle to calm yourself or connect with others because old patterns still shape your responses. Awareness is the first step to shifting these habits. Recognizing how your early relationships influence your feelings lets you question automatic reactions. For example, when you notice you're avoiding support, you can ask if this behavior really serves you or if it's a leftover pattern. Therapy or counseling often focuses on attachment patterns because changing these deep habits requires support. Working with a professional helps you explore old experiences and develop new emotional habits based on safety and trust. Practicing new habits like sharing feelings openly or asking for help strengthens alternative patterns. Over time, these choices reshape your emotional regulation and reduce the hold of attachment residue. Relationships in adulthood also influence this process. Positive, secure connections provide new models for handling emotions. They show that support is available and worth seeking, helping to rewrite old habits. For example, a person with avoidant patterns might learn to express vulnerability with a caring partner, slowly building comfort with closeness. This practice changes how emotions are managed and weakens old habits of withdrawal. Daily habits like mindfulness, journaling, or self-compassion exercises support emotional growth too. These tools help you notice feelings, respond kindly to yourself, and reduce the grip of old emotional scripts. Attachment-style residue reminds us that habits around emotions are deeply rooted. They come from your earliest experiences and shape your daily life more than you might expect. By understanding this, you gain insight into why some habits persist and how to change them. Your emotional habits are not fixed. With awareness and support, you can build new ways to regulate feelings and connect with others. This growth leads to healthier relationships and greater emotional balance. In everyday life, noticing patterns like avoidance, worry, or reluctance to seek help offers clues about your attachment-style residue. Paying attention to these habits lets you choose differently and create a more secure emotional life. Attachment-style residue shows that your past informs your present, but it doesn't have to define your future. You can learn to manage emotions in ways that feel safer and more effective, supporting lasting change in how you live and relate. Sometimes people tie their sense of worth to how well they succeed at habits. This is called outcome fusion. When your value depends on habit success, it creates heavy emotional pressure that can harm motivation and well-being. Instead of habits being tools for growth, they become tests of your personal worth. Imagine someone who wants to lose weight. They believe that if they don't meet their goal, they are a failure. Missing a workout or eating a treat feels like a reflection of their character, not just a slip in behavior. This fusion of outcome and self-worth makes each habit a high-stakes event, filled with fear and judgment. Outcome fusion creates toxic emotional weight. Success feels like relief and validation, while failure brings shame and self-criticism. These feelings can push you harder or make you give up entirely. The habit no longer feels like a positive choice, but a way to prove your value. For example, a student who links self-worth to grades might study intensely to earn praise, but one poor test score triggers harsh self-doubt. Instead of seeing the score as feedback, they see it as evidence of personal failure. This can lead to anxiety, burnout, or avoidance. This fusion also reduces flexibility. When your identity depends on success, you might resist adjustments or breaks. You fear that changing the habit or pace means losing worth. This rigidity increases stress and can make habits unsustainable. Outcome fusion often hides beneath surface motivation. You may think you want to improve for your own good, but deep down, you seek approval or fear rejection. This mix complicates how you feel about habits and yourself. Recognizing outcome fusion helps you separate your worth from habit results. You learn that habits are tools, not measures of who you are. Success and failure become steps in a process, not final judgments. For example, if you miss a workout, instead of thinking, "I'm lazy," you might say, "Today didn't go as planned, but I can try again tomorrow." This shift reduces emotional weight and supports steady progress. Building self-compassion is key. Treat yourself with kindness, regardless of habit outcomes. Accept that slips are normal and don't diminish your value as a person. Setting process-focused goals rather than outcome-focused goals also helps. Instead of saying, I must lose 10 pounds, say, I will move my body 3 times a week. This focuses on behavior, not worth, reducing pressure. Talking about these feelings with others can provide perspective. Friends or coaches can remind you that your worth isn't tied to a habit's success. This support lightens emotional burden. Outcome fusion often fuels cycles of perfectionism. You push for flawless habits, then punish yourself harshly for mistakes. Breaking this cycle means accepting imperfection and valuing effort over perfection. In daily life, notice when habit success or failure triggers strong feelings about your self-worth. This awareness lets you catch outcome fusion early and respond with self-kindness. Your value as a person isn't on the line every time you act. Habits are part of life, not definitions of who you are. Separating worth from results frees you to build habits with calm confidence and resilience. Outcome fusion can be heavy, but it doesn't have to control you. By changing how you view habits and yourself, you create space for healthier motivation and lasting change. Your current mood can unlock memories of past behaviors, shaping how you act in the moment. This is called mood-dependent memory recall. When you feel a certain way, your brain tends to bring up memories and habits linked to that mood. These recalled patterns often influence your choices, sometimes without your awareness. For example, if you're feeling sad, you might remember times when you coped with sadness by eating comfort food or withdrawing from others. These memories can prompt you to repeat the same behaviors now. The mood triggers a mental shortcut that brings back familiar ways of responding. This process happens because your brain links emotions to experiences and habits. When the emotional state returns, it activates those linked memories. The connection between mood and memory makes your past coping strategies easily accessible. Consider someone who feels anxious. That anxiety might bring up memories of past moments when they calmed down by pacing or smoking a cigarette. Even if they want to choose a healthier response, the recalled habit feels natural and tempting because it's tied to the current feeling. Mood-dependent recall works both for positive and negative moods. Feeling happy might bring up memories of socializing or exercising, encouraging similar behaviors. Feeling stressed might recall avoidance or procrastination habits. This shows how mood shapes habit cycles. This effect also explains why changing habits can be hard. When you feel a certain way, old habits linked to that feeling rise automatically. Even strong intentions struggle to override these mood-triggered memories. The habit feels almost built into your emotional state. For example, someone trying to quit smoking may find it hardest when they feel stressed or lonely, because those moods recall smoking as a way to cope. The memory linked to the mood makes the old habit more powerful and difficult to resist. Understanding mood-dependent memory recall helps you see why emotions affect your behavior more than you might expect. It shows that moods are not just feelings, but keys that unlock past habits. You can use this knowledge to manage habits better. When you notice a mood, pause and ask what habits or memories might come up with it. This awareness creates space to choose a different response instead of following automatic patterns. Building new habits also involves linking positive behaviors to various moods. For instance, practicing relaxation techniques during stress or choosing healthy snacks when bored helps create new mood habit connections. Over time, these new links make healthier choices feel natural. Mindfulness practices support this process by helping you observe your moods and responses without judgment. Noticing the urge to follow an old habit when a mood arises reduces its power. You learn to respond consciously rather than react automatically. Social support matters too. Talking about your moods and triggers with others can help you plan alternative responses. Knowing you're not alone makes it easier to break old patterns tied to emotions. Mood-dependent memory recall reminds you that habits are deeply tied to how you feel. Changing behavior means understanding these emotional links and creating new ones. In everyday life, moods come and go, but your responses don't have to stay the same. Paying attention to the moods that trigger habits gives you a tool to shift your behavior. Your brain stores powerful connections between feelings and actions. By noticing and reshaping these connections, you gain more control over your habits. Mood-dependent memory recall shows how your emotional state shapes your behavior patterns. Recognizing this helps you build habits that support your well-being, no matter what mood you're in. When you feel threatened or stressed, your brain often reaches for old habits that once provided comfort. This is called safety patterning. These habits aren't always helpful, but they feel familiar and secure. During tough times, your mind and body return to what feels safe, even if those patterns no longer serve you well. Imagine someone who has been trying to quit smoking. When faced with stress, like a difficult day at work or a family argument, the urge to smoke can return strongly. Smoking was once a way to manage stress, so the brain sees it as a safe pattern. Despite wanting to stay smoke-free, the old habit feels like a comfort zone to fall back on. Safety patterning happens because the brain prioritizes survival. It stores habits that helped you cope in the past, especially during threats or uncertainty. When new stress arises, the brain reactivates these familiar habits to reduce discomfort quickly. This automatic response helps you feel some control, even if the habit isn't ideal. For example, someone who struggles with emotional eating might find themselves reaching for snacks whenever they feel anxious or overwhelmed. The habit of eating for comfort was learned long ago. In moments of threat, this behavior returns to soothe emotions, even if it conflicts with their health goals. These safety habits often develop over years and become deeply ingrained. They provide a sense of predictability and relief when life feels unstable. But the comfort they offer is usually temporary and can create new problems, like weight gain, addiction, or social withdrawal. Safety patterning can explain why habits sometimes relapse after progress. When life gets difficult, old habits rise from the background to protect you emotionally. The mind's focus shifts from change and growth to survival and safety. Consider someone trying to manage anxiety through meditation. During calm times, the habit supports their well-being. But during a crisis, they might stop meditating and turn to old habits like smoking or excessive screen time. The safety pattern pulls them away from new behaviors toward what feels known and easier. Understanding safety patterning helps you respond differently. Recognizing that old habits return because your brain seeks comfort, not because you lack willpower, reduces self-judgment. It shifts your view from failure to a natural survival process. You can support healthier safety patterns by creating new habits that provide comfort and stability. For example, deep breathing, gentle exercise, or talking with supportive friends can become new go-to responses during stress. These alternatives satisfy the brain's need for safety without harmful effects. Building awareness is key. When you notice old habits returning in stressful moments, pause and ask what your brain is seeking. Are you looking for comfort, control, or relief? Naming this need helps you choose healthier responses. Preparing for stress also helps. Planning simple, comforting activities in advance creates a toolkit for tough times. Knowing you have options reduces the power of old safety habits. Social support plays a role too. Sharing your challenges with others can provide emotional safety that lessens the urge to fall back on harmful habits. Connection can replace the need for unsafe comfort patterns. Safety patterning is a reminder that habits serve deeper emotional needs. They aren't just about behavior, but about feeling secure in a changing world. When you understand this, you can work with your brain rather than against it. In everyday life, stress and fret come in many forms. Your old habits will try to return because they feel like a refuge. By recognizing safety patterning, you can gently guide yourself toward better habits that provide true comfort and support. Your brain's goal is to keep you safe. Sometimes, safety means old habits rise up, but you can build new patterns that protect you while helping you grow. This balance creates stronger, healthier habits for the long term. When people feel like their willpower runs out, they often call it ego depletion. They believe they've used up all their self-control and can't resist temptation anymore. But recent research suggests it's not about running low on willpower. Instead, it's about a shift in attention. This idea is called ego depletion reframing. Imagine you're trying to stick to a diet all day. You resist snacks, make healthy choices, and stay focused. Then, in the evening, you find it much harder to keep going. The usual explanation is that your willpower is empty. But what's really happening is that your attention has shifted away from your goal and toward rewards or distractions. Your brain is wired to balance effort and enjoyment. When you work hard to control yourself, your attention naturally starts looking for relief or pleasure. This shift doesn't mean you're weak or out of willpower. It's a normal change in focus from control to reward. For example, after a long day of making careful decisions, your mind might start noticing the smell of cookies or the comfort of relaxing on the couch. Your attention moves from sticking to the diet to the immediate reward of eating or resting. This shift pulls you toward old habits or temptations. This attentional shift explains why it's so easy to slip after periods of self-control. It's not that your willpower tank is empty, it's that your focus changes. When your mind starts seeking pleasure, resisting feels harder because your attention is no longer on the goal. Think about a student studying for hours. At first, they might be fully engaged, but as time passes, their attention drifts to checking their phone or daydreaming about fun activities. This change in focus is natural and signals a need for a break or a shift in activity. Understanding ego depletion as attentional shift helps reframe setbacks. Instead of blaming yourself for losing willpower, you see that your brain is simply redirecting focus. This view reduces guilt and opens new ways to manage habits. One way to handle this shift is by planning rewards or breaks. If you know your attention will move, you can schedule moments to enjoy something pleasant without breaking your overall habit. For example, a short walk or a favorite song can satisfy your brain's desire for reward while keeping you on track. Another strategy is to change your environment to reduce distractions. If your attention easily drifts to unhealthy snacks, keeping them out of sight lowers the chance your brain will focus on them. This helps maintain goal-directed attention longer. You can also train your attention like a muscle. Mindfulness practices improve your ability to notice when your focus shifts and gently bring it back to your goal. This strengthens control over where your attention goes. Ego depletion reframing shows that willpower isn't a limited resource that runs out. Instead, it's about managing where your attention goes. When you recognize the natural pull toward rewards, you can work with it rather than against it. This idea also explains why motivation can vary throughout the day. Your brain balances control and pleasure, so habits feel easier at some times and harder at others. Understanding this helps you plan activities and habits according to your natural rhythms. In daily life, noticing when your attention shifts helps you catch moments when you're vulnerable to old habits. Instead of forcing willpower, you can redirect focus or take a break to refresh your mind. Ego depletion reframing changes how you view habit challenges. It turns willpower from a scarce fuel into a flexible attention skill. By working with your brain's natural patterns, you build habits that last without harsh self-judgment. Your mind wants balance. When you learn to manage attention rather than rely on willpower alone, you gain more control and ease in changing habits. This shift creates a more sustainable path to personal growth. Every day, you act in ways that show who you believe you are. These repeated actions create identity-based scripts, patterns of behavior that rehearse and reinforce a particular sense of self. You don't just do habits, you perform a version of yourself through those habits. For example, someone who sees themselves as the organized person might keep a clean desk, plan their day carefully, and follow routines without fail. These behaviors are like scripts they repeat to show themselves and others who they are. The habit of tidying up isn't just about cleanliness. It's a way of living out the identity of being organized. These identity-based scripts shape how you act because your brain seeks consistency. It wants your behavior to match your self-image. When your actions align with your identity, you feel authentic and confident. But when they don't, you experience discomfort or doubt. Imagine a person who thinks of themselves as fit and active. They go to the gym regularly and choose healthy foods. These repeated behaviors keep the identity strong. If one day they skip the gym, it might feel like they're breaking character. This tension pushes them to return to their usual habits. Identity-based scripts work by linking habits to who you are, not just what you do. This connection makes habits more powerful and lasting. Changing a habit means changing the story you tell about yourself, which takes more effort than changing isolated behaviors. Sometimes people struggle because their habits don't match their desired identity. For example, someone might want to be a calm and patient person, but find themselves reacting quickly or losing temper. Their behavior clashes with their self-image, causing confusion and stress. This mismatch can keep old habits alive. If your identity is tied to being a busy and stressed person, you may unconsciously resist habits that promote calmness or relaxation. Changing your actions means changing that internal script first. You can build new identity-based scripts by choosing habits that support the person you want to be. Instead of focusing only on the habit itself, focus on the identity behind it. For example, say I am someone who takes care of my health, rather than I need to exercise more. This mindset helps you see the habit as a natural expression of who you are. Repetition is key. The more you perform behaviors that match your desired identity, the stronger the script becomes. Over time, these actions feel automatic and authentic. You're no longer forcing habits, you're living your identity. Social feedback influences identity scripts too. When others recognize and affirm your behavior, it reinforces your self-image. For example, compliments on your patience or discipline strengthen those identity traits, making habits easier to maintain. Identity-based scripts explain why some habits stick while others fade. Habits tied to your core identity feel meaningful and necessary. Habits that don't fit your story feel foreign and are easier to drop. Sometimes, people adopt multiple identity scripts, which can conflict. For instance, someone might see themselves as both the hard worker and the free spirit. These competing scripts can create tension in habits and choices. Awareness of identity-based scripts helps you understand why change can be difficult. It's not just about willpower, but about reshaping your self-story. This insight opens a path to deeper, more lasting habit change. In daily life, pay attention to the stories you tell yourself about who you are. Notice how these stories guide your actions and habits. When you want to change a habit, consider what new identity you want to embody. Identity-based scripts show that habits are more than routine. They are acts of self-expression. You build your identity with every repeated behavior. By choosing scripts that support your growth, you create a stronger, clearer sense of yourself.